So when I was going through a really rough financial patch last year, everything seemed to break at once. First, my car transmission died. It wasn't just making noises or slipping gears, it just gave out one afternoon on the way home from work. I coasted into a gas station and had to get it towed from there. The repair bill was more than what I had in my checking account. I put it on a card I was already trying to pay down. I figured at least that was the end of it. But the next morning my water heater stopped working. No hot water at all. Ice-cold shower before another shift at a job I already hated. I tried troubleshooting it with YouTube videos, but there was nothing simple to fix. The cheapest repair quote I got was almost $500. I sucked it up and used my savings. That left me with under $20 to last until payday. Then, 2 days after that, I noticed a dark spot spreading on the bathroom counter. I thought it was just an old shampoo bottle that had leaked, but when I picked it up, I realized it was water coming from the faucet. Under the sink, the pipe connection was fine, but the leak was higher, right at the base of the faucet where the handles were. It started slow, just a damp ring. Then by the next day, it was dripping steadily into the sink. I jammed a small towel around it just to stop the splashing sound, but that got soaked through every few hours. I was already behind on utilities and couldn't afford the spike in my water bill. Every dollar counted. I went online and tried to find a fix, but everything I read might as well have been in another language. I borrowed a wrench from a neighbor and tried tightening everything that looked loose, but nothing made a difference. 3 nights in a row, I sat on the edge of my tub just watching water fall, drip, 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 into the porcelain. It was maddening. The kind of slow, soft noise that crawls under your skin and stays there. I couldn't sleep well. I kept waking up thinking I heard it in the kitchen, or in my dreams. By the 3rd day, I felt like I was being mocked by a faucet. That 3rd night, I was in my bathrobe brushing my teeth and just staring at it. The reflection of the hallway light in the sink shimmered with every drop. My toothbrush stopped moving after a minute. I stood there, foam building up in my mouth, and just stared. It felt like everything in my life was going wrong, and that stupid faucet was the only thing I could see. I said something. I don't know why. Maybe I was just at the edge. I muttered, "I wish someone would just fix this thing while I sleep." I didn't even mean it. It was more like sarcasm, like when you stub your toe and say, "Great." But I said it out loud into the empty bathroom. And then I rinsed my mouth, turned off the light, and went to double-check all the locks like I always do. My house isn't fancy, but it's solid. I had the locks upgraded after someone tried breaking into a neighbor's place last spring. Deadbolts on both doors, and the windows have latches that click loud when you shut them. I checked each one. Front door, back door, bedroom windows, all shut tight. I didn't hear anything outside either, which was typical for this neighborhood. Everyone kept to themselves. I turned off the hallway light and went to bed. I always keep the bedroom fan running on low, mostly for the noise. It covers the creaks and plumbing sounds that make me think someone's in the house. I laid there, the fan whirring beside me, but the dripping sound still reached me, even through the door. I pulled the blanket over my head and squeezed my eyes shut. At some point, I guess I passed out. But right before I did, I remember thinking, honestly, what if I wake up tomorrow and it's fixed? Like a fairy tale. Like a joke. Like some neighbor heard me talking to myself and decided to sneak in as a favor. It was dumb, but I really thought it. Just for a second. Then I fell asleep to the sound of that slow, mocking drip. When I woke up the next morning, I went straight to the bathroom expecting to hear that annoying drip. Complete silence greeted me instead of the familiar sound. At first, I thought maybe I just beat the leak to its next drop, so I stood there, waiting, Nothing. I turned the faucet on. Water came out strong and smooth. I turned it off. No leak. I checked around the base of the faucet, touched the handles, ran my fingers along the underside where the water had been pooling. Dry. Everything looked new, shinier than before. The crusty buildup on the edges was gone. It didn't make sense. I leaned in, looking under the sink again. No puddles. No moisture on the pipes. It was like someone had come in and replaced the whole thing. I stood back up slowly and just stared at it. I had no explanation. I searched the entire house. All my doors were still locked, chains still latched from the inside. Windows sealed and screens intact. No muddy footprints. Nothing out of place. I even checked the front yard in case a service truck had parked outside in the night. But the street was empty. My first thought was that I was losing my mind from stress. I even opened the fridge to see if maybe I'd left it ajar or something obvious. Something that would make this feel more explainable. Everything was normal. I sat down at the kitchen table and just stared at my phone for a while, unsure what to do next. After a few minutes, I tried to calm down and think it through. I told myself there had to be a rational answer. Maybe the management company for the building still had a spare key left from when they helped the previous owner. Or maybe the old owner himself still came around sometimes. Maybe he lived nearby and was the kind of person who couldn't let go of a place he spent years in. That would explain someone entering without asking, fixing something, and leaving like nothing happened. No damage, no theft, just a quiet repair. I figured maybe I'd find a receipt or a note in the mailbox later. Maybe the person didn't want thanks, just saw something broken and fixed it because it used to be theirs. It was weird, but I'd heard of stranger things. I went ahead and called the property management number saved in my phone from when I moved in. I asked if they'd sent a plumber by chance. The woman on the line seemed confused and said no. She double-checked their maintenance records and told me nothing had been scheduled or approved for my unit. I asked if the previous owner ever had a key or access, and she said he turned everything in the week he moved out. They don't keep spares, and no one from their office had been near my unit in months. Her answers didn't help. I hung up and sat there with a weird tightness in my chest. I started to question myself again. Did I sleepwalk? Did I somehow fix it and forget? But no, there were parts replaced. A rubber gasket, sealant I didn't own, a new washer. Things I wouldn't even know how to use, let alone where to find. I didn't have tools in the house, just a junk drawer with scissors and tape. I opened that drawer now, hoping to find something new, something left behind. It was the same as always. That's when it started to really bother me. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel safe. I got up and checked the bathroom again, just to be sure. Still no leak. Still dry. I stared at my reflection for a long time. My own face looked like someone I didn't quite trust. That night, I kept all the lights on and barely slept. I didn't know who I was trying to scare off, some intruder, or the idea that maybe I was coming unhinged. I never found out who fixed my faucet, and honestly, part of me was afraid to investigate further. The repair saved me money I didn't have, and spared me the kind of stress I was barely holding together from. So I tried to feel grateful instead of violated. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been inside my home, maybe watching me struggle, maybe waiting for the right moment. I changed all the locks that weekend. Front, back, even the inside door to the basement laundry room. I installed a small security camera pointed at my front door. Motion activated. Sends clips to my phone. It helped me sleep better. For a while. Some nights, I still lie in bed and wonder if someone's watching my house. Not from a window or a camera, but close. Like they know when things are breaking down and wait until I'm desperate. I keep telling myself it was probably just a neighbor. A kind one. Someone who saw me exhausted, figured out what was wrong, and fixed it quietly. But that doesn't explain the locks. It doesn't explain the perfect repair. It doesn't explain why nothing else was touched. The deeper part of me knows that's not the whole truth. The silence in my house isn't empty anymore. It feels like someone else has already been here. And maybe they'll come back. When something else breaks. When I need them again. When I was 19, and in my second year of college, I met this guy Ricardo at the bus stop near campus. I was waiting with my roommate after class, both of us bundled up because it was late fall and already freezing out. Ricardo came over and asked if either of us had a lighter. My roommate handed him hers, and while he lit his cigarette, he started making small talk about how cold it was and how packed the campus bookstore had been that week. I didn't think much of it. Just some guy chatting to kill time. He looked a bit older, maybe late 20s, with glasses and a worn-out messenger bag. When my roommate's bus came, she got on and waved goodbye, leaving me alone with him for a few more minutes. He asked if I was also a student at the university, and I said yeah, second year. He told me he was 28, doing grad school in electrical engineering. He asked what I was studying and nodded along when I said psychology. Just casual stuff. I figured he was just bored, trying to make conversation until his bus came. My bus pulled up before his, and that's when he got a little more insistent. He said, "Hey, we should get coffee sometime," and pulled out his phone. I didn't really want to give my number out, but I also didn't want to make things awkward right before stepping on the bus. So I said sure, rattled off my number, and got on. The next day, I started getting texts from him. It started off normal. He asked how my classes were going, mentioned a coffee shop near campus he liked. But then he kept texting. I had morning classes and a part-time job in the afternoons, and every time I checked my phone, there were new messages. At first, I replied a couple times just to be polite, but he didn't get the hint that I was busy. By the third day, his messages turned pushy. He said he wanted to meet up that night, even offered to pick me up from campus. When I told him I was busy with midterms, he said, "I'll pay for dinner. Anywhere you want. My treat." I didn't respond right away. An hour later, another message. "We can skip dinner if you want. Just come over to my place instead." That was the moment it stopped being awkward and started feeling off. I didn't reply. For the rest of the week, he kept sending texts, asking why I was ignoring him, telling me I was missing out, asking if I was seeing someone else. I stopped responding completely. A week passed, then two. Still, I kept getting messages. Sometimes it was, "I hope you're doing okay." Other times it was weirder, like, "You don't have to be scared of me." That one stuck in my head for days. I didn't answer any of them. I deleted the thread, but he'd send a new text and it'd pop up again. Sometimes multiple times a day. Sometimes just once, usually late at night. After about a month of this, I was at my job restocking shelves when my phone buzzed again. It was him. This time it just said, "I miss you." I hadn't spoken to him more than once in person. I never went out with him. Never hung out. We met at a bus stop. I didn't even know his last name. I finally blocked his number that night. It took me a few minutes because I kept second-guessing myself, wondering if I was overreacting. But once I did it, the silence felt like a relief. Blocking his main number only made Ricardo more creative in his harassment campaign. Within days, I started getting texts from unfamiliar numbers. Same style, same tone, same phrases. He used names like Dan or Luis, but I knew it was him. The punctuation was the same. The way he wrote your without the apostrophe, or how he always ended sentences with lol, even when nothing was funny. Then the social media accounts started popping up. I'd block one and another would take its place, each one using slightly different profile pictures that looked like stock images or filtered selfies. One had a photo of a coffee cup and used the name Quiet Engineer 87, but the messages were unmistakably his. He'd write, "I'm just trying to make you smile," or, "You don't have to feel weird. I'd take care of you." I stopped accepting follow requests from anyone I didn't know personally. He found my Instagram, then my Facebook, then somehow my LinkedIn. The messages kept changing tone. One day it was, "I'm sorry if I scared you," and the next it would be, "You should at least hear what I have to offer." He started suggesting things like paying my rent or covering my textbooks. The amounts he named weren't small. He'd offer hundreds. It made me feel sick. This wasn't just someone being annoying. He'd memorized my class schedule, mentioned buildings by name, and once described what I wore on a Thursday. I started leaving campus as quickly as possible after classes. I asked one of my professors if I could submit assignments online to avoid staying after. I didn't want to be paranoid, but I couldn't ignore how persistent he was. I changed my number. He still found a way to contact me, this time through an old student blog account I hadn't updated since freshman year. He sent a message pretending to be someone asking about class notes, but halfway through, the tone changed. He wrote, "It's crazy how you act like we never had a connection." That was when I stopped using my last name on anything public. I changed profile names, deleted bios, took down any tagged photos where I was named. It made me feel invisible, which was what I wanted, but it didn't make me feel safe. I started carrying pepper spray. I memorized the emergency contact numbers for campus police, and I kept telling myself it would eventually stop. 6 months after first meeting Ricardo, I saw him again. It was outside the university library, near one of the side exits. I was walking out with my headphones in and almost didn't notice him until he stepped into my path. He smiled like we were friends who hadn't seen each other in years. "Hey, still busy with classes?" I froze for a second. He looked the same. Same hoodie, same messenger bag. Like nothing had happened. "We should get coffee," he said. "Just catch up. No pressure." I told him flatly that I wasn't interested and didn't want any contact. He kept smiling like I'd said something funny. "I just think you're misunderstanding who I am," he said. "I'm a really good guy. I'm stable. I have plans. You're not even giving me a chance." I looked around. Students were walking past us. I stepped back and raised my voice enough for people nearby to hear. "You need to leave me alone. Don't talk to me again." That wiped the smile off his face. He looked embarrassed, maybe more irritated than anything, and muttered something I didn't catch. I walked straight to the campus security desk, didn't stop or look back. I gave them everything. His name, phone numbers, screenshots of messages, links to fake accounts. The officer who listened was older, calm, and didn't interrupt. He nodded and said I'd done the right thing. He told me they'd had other reports about Ricardo. Apparently, I wasn't the first student to complain. They issued him an official warning: harassment, stalking, trespassing. I was told that if he approached me again, he'd be permanently banned from campus and possibly arrested. They said he'd been on their radar for a while. That part stayed with me. I wasn't special. I was part of a pattern. He'd done this before, maybe even more than they knew. After the warning, I never saw him again. No more texts, no more accounts. It just stopped. But even now, I still glance over my shoulder when I'm walking to my car alone. I still double-check my locks at night. My social media is locked down. My number unlisted. Sometimes I think about how many girls just block and hope that's enough. I almost did the same. But no means no. You shouldn't have to say it 10 times. You shouldn't need an official warning for someone to understand you want to be left alone. It happened during my senior year when my friend Marcus and I were hanging out at the mall near the group home facilities on the east side of town. That area was always a little rough, but the mall itself was decent enough. 3 floors, a food court, and a movie theater that somehow always smelled like popcorn and mildew at the same time. We were just walking around window shopping and killing time before catching the bus home. It was a Friday evening, not too busy, but not dead either. The place had that low hum of families eating pretzels, teenagers flirting near the arcade, bored security guards standing by the escalators. Marcus was trying to flirt with one of the shoe store girls when this girl came up to us, looking really upset. She was probably around our age, but she looked worn out, hair matted in places, one shoe untied and flopping when she walked, no purse, and her clothes were torn in a few spots. Not like full-on ripped apart, but definitely like she'd been in some kind of fight or accident. There was a reddish mark above her left eyebrow too, like she'd been hit with something. She looked directly at me first, then at Marcus and said, "Hey, I need help." Her voice wasn't loud or panicked, just firm, like she was trying to stay composed. I was supposed to meet someone I knew, but they robbed me. She paused and swallowed hard, looking around like she wasn't sure whether to keep talking or just run away. They hit me, took my bag, everything. Then they left me at some medical clinic, but they wouldn't treat me because I didn't have ID. We didn't really know what to say at first. Marcus asked if she needed us to call someone, but she said she didn't know any numbers by heart. She didn't have a phone, didn't even have a jacket. I remember how she kept rubbing her arms even though it wasn't cold inside. She looked around again, and I noticed how uncomfortable she seemed just standing there, like she didn't trust anyone nearby. I asked where she needed to go, and she said the bus station. She was trying to get home to her cousin's place in Dayton. That was a solid 2 hours away, and she said she didn't have any cash or ID to buy a ticket. Marcus and I looked at each other, not really sure what to do. Neither of us had a car. I had like $12 on me, not enough for a ticket. So I told her we could at least walk with her to the bus stop outside the mall. Maybe help her figure something out from there. She looked relieved. "Thank you," she said, with this shaky breath that seemed like she'd been holding it in all day. As we walked toward the exit, I noticed something that didn't sit right. She kept one hand in her jacket pocket the whole time, even though the zipper was halfway broken and the jacket itself barely looked functional. At first, I figured it was just instinct. Maybe she was cold or trying to hide her hands, but she wasn't shivering or anything. And every time someone walked past us, she turned her head sharply to watch them. Not in a scared way, more like she was sizing them up, watching their direction, how fast they were moving. Marcus didn't seem to notice. He kept talking, trying to make her laugh, asking where she was from and stuff. She barely responded to him. When we reached the first set of glass doors near the mall exit, she paused and looked out toward the sidewalk like she was checking something. Her fingers moved inside her pocket like she was fiddling with something small, but I didn't hear any jingling like keys or coins. We pushed through the door and stepped outside. It had started to get dark, and the streetlights were flickering on. The bus stop was a short walk down the sidewalk, past the big planter full of dead ferns and an out-of-service payphone that hadn't worked in years. She walked fast now, not limping or anything, just quick steps, and kept glancing behind her shoulder like someone might be following us. I remember asking her if she was okay again, and she just nodded once without speaking. We passed a couple smoking outside the food court entrance. As we walked by, she glanced at the guy's hand like she was checking what he was holding. I saw her shoulders tense slightly. Marcus finally started picking up on her weird behavior and leaned in toward me. "Yo, she's acting mad paranoid," he whispered. I nodded but didn't say anything. When we reached the bus stop, she sat on the bench with her back to the wall. She kept her hand in her pocket and stared across the parking lot at the row of shops on the far side. One of the stores was closing up, and a guy was locking the metal gate. She watched him like a hawk. "Do you know what time the last bus is?" I asked. She didn't answer at first, just shifted slightly and finally said, "They said it was at 8:45. That's what I was told." Marcus checked his phone. "That's in like 20 minutes, he said. "You sure you're safe waiting here?" She looked at him and finally pulled her hand out of her pocket. I glanced down and saw her holding a small metal object, flat and square, maybe a blade or a box cutter. She noticed me looking and immediately shoved it back into her pocket. "I'm fine," she said quickly. "Just in case." Neither of us said anything for a moment. Marcus took a slow step back, his face completely blank now. "All right," he muttered. We stood there for another few seconds. Then she said, "I appreciate you walking with me. You should go." And we did. We crossed the parking lot without looking back. When we got near the main entrance, there were two older men standing just outside the doors. One was tall and wearing a stained windbreaker with the hood up. The other was shorter, bald, and had deep lines in his face, like he smoked too much. As soon as we stepped out, the taller one walked straight over and grabbed the girl by the shoulder. Not gently either. It looked rough, like he was trying to control her. "There you are," he said, his voice low but harsh. Then he looked at us and added, "We're all riding in the van. Let's go." Marcus and I froze. The guy hadn't even introduced himself, and the way he said it made my stomach twist. He glanced behind us like he was checking if anyone was watching, then motioned toward the parking lot where a white van was idling by the curb. The side door was open, and inside it looked dark. I could barely make out one more person sitting in the driver's seat. "No thanks," I said, trying to stay calm. "We're good. She just needed help getting to the bus." But the girl suddenly tightened her grip on Marcus's arm. Her hand was clamped around his sleeve like a vice, and her entire attitude changed. Gone was the shaky, quiet girl from before. Her eyes were cold now, and she leaned closer to him. "We're going together," she said, her voice flat. "Don't act stupid." Marcus pulled back instinctively, but she held on. The man took a step toward me and lifted his hand like he was going to shove me. "Get in the damn van," he said. I took a step back, heart pounding. I looked around. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few people walking far off, no one close enough to notice anything yet. It all felt wrong. The way the man grabbed her, the way she acted now, the van. It wasn't normal. It wasn't safe. "No," I said, louder this time. "Back off." That's when the man reached out and tried to grab me by the arm. He missed, but he came close. His fingers grazed my jacket and I backed up fast, almost tripping over the curb. The girl was still yanking on Marcus's arm, now whispering something to him I couldn't hear. Her nails were digging in and he was trying to shake her off. I panicked. I screamed, "Help! Help us!" It was loud. My voice cracked and echoed off the mall walls. I just kept yelling, "Help! Security! Somebody!" It worked. 2 mall security guards who'd been standing near the food court entrance started running toward us. The second the men saw them moving, everything changed. The taller guy let go of the girl, cursed, and shoved her toward the van. She let go of Marcus and bolted after them without a word. The 3 of them ran down the sidewalk and disappeared between a row of parked cars. The guards caught up to us seconds later. One of them, a younger guy in a dark blue uniform, asked, "What happened? Are you okay?" We were shaking. Neither of us could get words out right away. I kept pointing toward the lot, trying to explain what just happened, how we'd tried to help her, how it had gone so wrong. The guards made us sit down on the curb while they called it in. One stayed with us, the other jogged in the direction they ran, but we didn't see where they went after that. A few minutes later, a supervisor showed up. He was older, wore a different color badge, and seemed more serious. He asked us to describe everything. We told him about the girl's story, how we walked her to the bus stop, the blade, the van, the 2 men. When we mentioned the girl's behavior shift, the grip, the sudden aggression, he nodded like he'd heard it all before. "She's been around here before," he said. "Her name's Kara, or something like that. We've had issues with her a few times. Drugs mostly. She shows up looking messed up, tries to get people to go with her. The men she's with change, but it's usually the same setup." "What kind of setup?" Marcus asked, still looking pale. "They get someone to let their guard down. Act like a victim, gain sympathy, then guide them right to the van. It's happened here more than once. One time last year, a teenage girl ended up halfway across the state before she was found. She thought she was helping someone." That made me sick, just hearing it out loud. The supervisor kept talking, explaining how it's a tactic: lure with sympathy, isolate the target, then make a quick move to grab and vanish. Most people don't even know what's happening until it's too late. He said we were lucky. The fact that we yelled drew attention. That's what probably saved us. We sat in silence after that. I couldn't stop staring at the spot where the van had been. The guards offered to walk us to the bus. We didn't argue. We didn't say much either. The bus ride home felt long. I stared out the window the whole time, trying to process how fast things had changed. I still think about that day. About how someone who looked helpless was actually leading us into a trap. We thought we were helping. We weren't stupid, just too trusting. It's hard to admit that. Harder to accept it. Now, whenever I see someone on the street asking for help, something in me hesitates. I hate that. I hate that it changed the way I see people. But I can't forget the feeling of her grip tightening, or the man's voice telling us to get in the van. Sometimes people look like they need saving, but sometimes they're the ones trying to hurt you. That's a lesson I wish I never had to learn. When I was 14, my friend Sarah and I were buying snacks at this little convenience store next to the big mall in Phoenix. It was the kind of place that smelled like old hot dogs and freezer burn, the kind of store that always had sticky floors and a broken slushy machine. We were there because we had a plan. We'd both saved our allowance for 2 weeks and figured we'd blow it all on chips, soda, and maybe a ticket to whatever PG-13 movie was playing. It was summer, and our parents didn't really ask questions as long as we checked in once or twice. We grabbed a bag of Doritos, a couple candy bars, and some Arizona iced tea, paid for everything in crumpled bills, and pushed through the glass door, stepping out into the dry, blinding sun. That's when the man came up to us. He looked like he'd just crawled out of a bar fight. His shirt was stained and ripped at the collar, and his face was blotchy, the kind of red that only comes from heat or alcohol. The smell hit me first, booze and something else, something sharp like gasoline. He walked straight up to us, his eyes not quite steady, and muttered something I didn't catch. We both froze. Then louder he said, "Give me your money." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut straight through the noise of traffic and people coming out of the mall entrance behind us. Then he pulled his jacket back just enough so we could see the folding knife tucked into the inner pocket. I remember Sarah gasping a little. We didn't scream or cry though. We just handed it over. We didn't even hesitate. Between us we had maybe $20, a few crumpled bills that he grabbed without even looking at them. He stuffed them in his pocket and stared at us for a second. I was hoping he'd just turn around and walk off, but then he said, "Come on, you're not done yet." He waved his hand in a gesture that looked casual, like he was just leading two friends across the parking lot. "Let's go to the grocery store. I need more." Sarah and I just looked at each other, but we didn't run. His hand was back near the knife again, and we were both too scared to move the wrong way. So we went. We walked across the parking lot with him between us. It must have been over 100 degrees out, but I didn't feel the heat anymore. We passed people going in and out of stores, loading groceries, some with their kids. Nobody gave us a second look. From a distance, we probably looked like a dad and his daughters. He kept talking under his breath, things like, "They'll give it to me if you're with me," and "I'll just say it's my EBT card." The grocery store was big and crowded. He steered us toward the entrance with one hand, keeping it just close enough to brush against my elbow. When the automatic doors opened, the cold air hit me hard and made everything feel even more surreal. He turned to us and said, "Don't try anything." His tone was flat. Then he added, "I'm serious." Inside, the lighting was bright and ugly. We moved through the produce section, his hand still near that knife. I didn't know what he was planning exactly, but I knew it wasn't just about money. He grabbed a cart and started putting things in it. Cans of soup, bags of chips, a frozen pizza, like we were a family shopping together. He kept us close. Sarah walked on one side of the cart, and I was on the other, and I kept thinking that maybe someone would notice. But nobody did. After a few minutes, he turned down a quieter aisle near the back, the kind where the lights flicker a little, and hardly anyone goes. That's when his mood shifted. He leaned in close to Sarah and whispered something that made her flinch. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw her go pale. Then he looked at me and said, "One of you's gonna help me check out. Just act normal." We made it back toward the front of the store. The registers were busy, but not chaotic. He handed me the cart handle and said, "Push it." I did. Sarah was right next to me. He was behind us now, which somehow made it worse. I felt like if I looked back, he'd take it as a challenge. I didn't move my head, but I kept scanning the checkout lanes for someone, anyone, who might help. I saw a security guard standing near the doors, bored and sipping a drink. For a second, I thought about yelling, but I couldn't make my mouth work. Then Sarah dropped the pack of gum she was holding. It hit the floor and slid under the candy rack near the conveyor belt. She bent down fast and whispered to me, "I'm going to run. On 3. I nodded without looking at her. My hands were sweating on the cart handle. She stood up slowly, and we both took a step forward as the line moved. 1, she whispered. I swallowed. My knees were shaking. 2, I gripped the cart tighter. 3, she took off like a shot, bolting straight toward the entrance. I followed a second later, leaving the cart behind. I heard the man yell, something sharp and angry, but we didn't stop. We ran past the security guard who yelled out, "Hey!" but didn't try to stop us. I didn't look back. We sprinted out into the parking lot, cutting between cars, nearly tripping over a shopping cart. I heard footsteps behind us but didn't turn to see who it was. We kept running. Inside the grocery store, he immediately headed for the liquor section in the back. He didn't even hesitate. He moved like he'd been there 100 times before, walking past the bakery and deli without even glancing over. Sarah and I followed a few steps behind him, trying not to look scared. He kept glancing over his shoulder to make sure we were still close. Every time he looked at us, he would pat the inside of his jacket where the knife was. We understood what that meant. No running, no talking, no eye contact. When we passed the produce section, I saw a store worker stacking apples. I thought about mouthing help or dropping something to get her attention, but he was right there. One tap to the jacket and a shake of his head. It was enough to stop me. Sarah kept her eyes on the ground. The security guard was still posted at the entrance. He looked half asleep, leaning on a counter, sipping a drink. We passed right by him, and he didn't even glance at us. At the back of the store, the liquor shelves were tall and packed tight. He scanned them quickly, mumbling something about price tags. We stood next to him in the narrow aisle. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. He started comparing vodka brands, picking up bottles and turning them in his hand like he was shopping for a party. He asked out loud if one of us knew which brand was the best deal, but we didn't answer. He didn't press it. He just kept flipping bottles around, muttering to himself. That's when it happened. He got distracted. He crouched down to check something on the bottom shelf, holding 2 bottles in one hand and reading labels. Sarah looked at me. I looked back at her. She gave the smallest nod. We started backing away slowly, one step at a time. He was still crouched, focused on the shelf, not looking at us. My legs were shaking so bad I thought I might trip, but I kept moving. We didn't turn around until we were halfway across the aisle. Then we ran. We bolted down the next aisle, past paper towels and cleaning supplies, then hooked a sharp left into housewares. A couple of employees were stocking pots and pans. One shouted at us as we ran past, but we didn't stop. We saw a gray metal door with a sign that said, "Employees only." I didn't care. Sarah pushed it open hard, and we flew through into a narrow hallway full of stacked boxes and carts. The hallway twisted once before leading to another metal door. This one had a big red push bar. We slammed into it and spilled out into the hot afternoon sun. We were in a narrow alley behind the store, lined with dumpsters and cracked pavement. I heard the door bang shut behind us. We ran. We didn't stop until we reached the sidewalk 2 blocks away. My lungs were burning, and Sarah's face was soaked in sweat and tears. We turned the corner and spotted a bus stop just ahead. An old man was sitting on the bench reading a newspaper. We sat down as far from him as possible, still shaking. The next bus pulled up 5 minutes later, and we got on without speaking. On the bus, I stared out the window, trying not to cry. Sarah wiped her face with her sleeve and didn't say anything for a long time. When we got to our stop, we got off and just stood there on the corner. I wanted to call someone, but I couldn't. We were too scared. Too afraid he'd seen us run and would come after us somehow. Neither of us had gotten a good look at his face. He never gave his name. He didn't seem like the type of person who would let something go if he thought you crossed him. We decided not to tell anyone. Not the police. Not our parents. We went home and tried to forget about it. But I couldn't. I kept replaying the moment in the liquor aisle when he wasn't looking, when we made our move. I thought about how different things could have gone if he'd looked up just a second earlier. Sarah didn't tell her parents until years later. She only told them because she saw the man's picture on the news. He'd been arrested for robbing 2 teenagers in a parking lot outside that same convenience store. Then they linked him to a string of similar robberies. He always used the same method: approach young girls, show the knife, pretend to be calm. He made it look casual, like he was just walking with family. I don't know how many people he hurt before they caught him. Probably more than we'll ever know. I wish we'd gone to the police. I wish we'd done something to stop him sooner. But we were kids, and we were terrified. We thought staying quiet would keep us safe. Maybe it did. But sometimes I still think about the others he scared, the ones who didn't run in time. When I was 28, I worked as a programmer in Austin and lived in a quiet neighborhood on Oakland Avenue. I'd been there a few years, and nothing strange had ever really happened until last Thursday. I pulled into my driveway a little after 6 p.m., same time as always. It had been a long day, debugging a server sync issue, and I was looking forward to just microwaving leftovers and zoning out in front of the TV. I grabbed my laptop bag from the passenger seat, locked the car, and was halfway up the front walk when I heard loud, fast knocking at the front door. Like pounding, not just knocking. It was aggressive, almost panicked. I stopped walking. I live alone, and nobody ever comes to my house unannounced. I crept up slowly, peeking through the living room window that faces the porch. There was a man standing there, mid-40s maybe, wearing a faded denim jacket, dark jeans, and beat-up tennis shoes. His hair was messy, and he kept shifting from foot to foot like he couldn't stand still. His voice carried through the door. He was shouting my full name, first and last, yelling it like he knew me. He was saying it over and over. "Open up! Open the damn door! I need to talk to you!" I didn't move. I had never seen this guy before in my life. I stayed inside and raised my voice so he could hear me through the door. I said, "Who are you? What do you want?" He banged his fist harder against the door, rattling the hinges. "You know why I'm here. Don't play dumb. We need to talk now." I didn't respond right away. My heart was thudding. There was nothing in his voice that sounded sane or safe. It was this mix of anger and desperation that made me freeze. I backed away from the door a few steps and watched him through the edge of the curtain. He kept yelling, pacing back and forth across my porch. His voice started getting louder, more frantic. "You think you can ignore me? You think I won't do something about it?" I shouted back, still behind the door. "I don't know who you are. Leave or I'm calling the police." He didn't even pause. He slammed his palm against the door again, then punched the wall next to it. "You owe me, you piece of shit. Don't act like this is news." He started yelling about money, about how I knew damn well what he was talking about. I grabbed my phone and backed into the kitchen. My hands were shaking, but I managed to unlock it and call 911. I told the dispatcher that there was a man on my porch yelling my name, demanding money, and refusing to leave. She kept me on the line, asking questions. I answered everything I could quietly, while peeking through the blinds. The guy was pacing in circles now, walking from one end of the porch to the other, shouting things like, "You think I forgot?" and "You made promises, now pay up." None of it made sense to me. It was like he'd mistaken me for someone else. The dispatcher said officers were on the way and to stay inside, keep the doors locked. I told her I wasn't going anywhere. While I stayed on the line, I saw the man stop yelling and suddenly look across the street. He bolted down the steps and ran across the lawn to a dark blue sedan parked just on the other side of the street. I hadn't even noticed it was there before. He jumped in, slammed the door, and the car peeled out with this squeal of tires, heading east down Oakland. By the time the police got there, he was gone. I described him and the car as best I could. The officer nodded, wrote everything down, asked if I recognized him. I told him again that I'd never seen the guy before in my life. They asked if I had any enemies, anyone who might want to threaten me. I said no. I work from home most days. I don't get into fights. I don't owe anyone anything. After taking my statement, one of the officers gave me a card and said to call 911 if he came back, even if he just drove by. They looked around the property, made sure all the windows and doors were locked, then left. I didn't sleep much that night. Every little sound made me get up and check the blinds. The next morning, I opened my blinds and immediately froze. The same dark blue sedan was parked directly across the street, just like the night before. This time, there was no mistaking it. Same scratches on the passenger door. Same dented front fender. He'd come back. I backed away from the window and reached for my phone, already dialing before I made it to the hallway. I'd barely pressed call when the banging started again. Louder, faster, with more force than the first time. He was shouting my name, yelling about some deal, his voice cracked and furious. "You think you can screw me and hide? We had a deal, you bastard." I gave the dispatcher my address again, told them he was back and pounding on my door. I moved to the kitchen where I could still hear him, but he couldn't see me. He started hitting the windows too, not just the door, like he was trying to break in through sheer persistence. "I know you're in there. Don't make me come through this glass." I heard him try the doorknob, then slam his fist against it. My whole body was tense, but I stayed hidden. The sirens were faint at first, but they got louder fast. 2 squad cars rolled up to the curb. I peeked through the blinds and saw the man jump off my porch and bolt toward his car. One officer was already out and moving toward him. He shouted something I couldn't make out, and the man stopped halfway into the street. The second officer moved in from behind and tackled him before he could get the door open. They got him cuffed right there in the middle of the road. I just stood there watching, not moving, not breathing, until the pounding in my chest eased enough to step away from the window. After a few minutes, one of the officers came to my door. He asked me to confirm what had happened, and I told him everything. Both days, everything the man had shouted, how I'd never seen him before the first incident. The other officer stayed with the man, who was now sitting in the back of a squad car, slumped and shaking. The cop at my door nodded a lot as I talked, scribbling notes. He explained that the man was claiming I owed him money from some sort of business transaction, but when they pressed him on it, the story started changing. First, he said it was about a loan. Then it was about a payment for a truck I supposedly bought from him. Then something about a gambling debt. None of it lined up, and he couldn't provide any names or details besides mine. They suspected he was high on something. "We've seen it before," the officer said. "The drugs scramble them. They fixate, get locked into these made-up versions of reality." Later that afternoon, a detective called me. He was calm, professional, but straight to the point. He said the man had a history of meth and prescription abuse. The past year alone, he'd been picked up 3 times for trespassing or public disturbance. The detective didn't think I was in any real danger, not from someone like this. He said people in that condition often latch onto an idea and run with it, no matter how wrong it is. "You just happened to be the target this time," he said. The man was formally charged with harassment and trespassing. A restraining order was issued as part of his release conditions. I wasn't taking any chances. That weekend, I bought a full set of outdoor security cameras and had them installed. One on the porch, one over the driveway, one watching the backyard. I even moved my car to a different side street for a while. Changed up my grocery store, took alternate routes to work. I didn't sleep much that first week, always checking the footage, always listening for footsteps. Over time, the anxiety eased, but it never completely disappeared. The detective told me something that stuck with me. He said sometimes these incidents happen not because someone's targeting you, but because you're just close enough to someone else's breakdown. The man had found my name somehow, maybe from public records, maybe by chance. Maybe I looked like someone he used to know, or maybe he just picked a house and convinced himself it mattered. I never got an answer. What I learned is that danger doesn't always come with a clear motive or a plan. Sometimes it comes from someone who's unraveling, someone who believes something so strongly that no amount of truth will shake it. And if your name or your address happens to land in their broken version of reality, you become a part of it, whether you want to or not. Three years ago, I was driving through Colorado on a long-haul trip from Utah to Kansas City when my rig suddenly died halfway up a mountain pass. It was 2:07 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I looked down at the dash just before everything went dark. The engine, the lights, even the dash display. Dead silent. I tried to crank the ignition. Nothing. Tried again. Just a weak click. No cell reception either. Not even a single bar. I sat there for a moment, blinking at the empty night outside my windshield, wondering what the hell I was going to do. After a minute or two, I let the truck coast down the incline. I rode the brakes gently, figuring I'd just roll until I could find a shoulder or a pull-off. Maybe 2 minutes later, I saw the outline of a faded old truck stop. Big cracked lot, long canopy with broken lights, a boarded-up convenience store, and an old garage bay. No signs, no lit windows, just silhouettes under the moonlight. I turned the wheel and glided into the lot. Braked hard, came to a stop. I sat for a second, taking it all in. No other trucks, no lights. No vending machines glowing inside the storefront. Just me and my dead rig. I shut everything down and climbed into the sleeper. I wasn't panicked yet. I figured I'd catch a few hours of sleep and wait for daylight to try and get a tow. There was no point stumbling around in the dark with no reception and no idea how far I was from town. I'd passed a gas station maybe 40 miles back, but that was behind a steep grade. Climbing it on foot in the dark would have been stupid. So, I locked up, cracked the windows just a little, and got into my sleeping bag. The silence out there was thick, almost too quiet. Even in remote places you usually hear wind or crickets or something. But there, it was just dead still. An hour must have passed, maybe more. I didn't fall fully asleep, just kind of hovered between dozing and listening. Then I saw movement. Not close at first, just in the distance. Someone walking between the old structures near the back of the lot. I sat up, pushed the curtain aside. The light from the moon was bright enough to see their outline. They moved slowly, kind of wandering. At first I thought it was another driver who maybe had broken down too. But something felt wrong. They didn't walk with purpose. They'd drift behind one building and suddenly appear near another, like they weren't actually walking between them, just popping up randomly. Their clothing looked pale, maybe white or light blue, loose and kind of flowing. I thought of hospital scrubs, or a gown. Thin legs. No shoes, I realized. I leaned over and grabbed my flashlight, clicked it on and pointed it out the window. I didn't shine it directly on them, just close enough to get a better look. The person didn't react at all. They kept moving like I wasn't even there. They were about 100 feet away now, weaving in lazy circles between a rusted dumpster and a cinder block wall. I kept watching. They didn't look up once. No sudden jerks or sprinting or anything. Just a slow, odd shuffle. I started thinking maybe they were on something, maybe meth or painkillers. They had that dazed, off-balance movement, like they weren't in their own body. But I also thought they might be hurt or lost. Who would be out there in the middle of nowhere dressed like that? I unlocked the door and stepped down from the cab. Just 1 foot onto the step. I kept my flashlight steady and watched them for another minute. The cold hit me fast, dry mountain air, sharp in the lungs. I wanted to call out, but I held off. They still hadn't looked up. No reaction to the light, to me opening the door, to anything. I backed into the cab, shut the door quietly, and locked it again. Then I turned off the flashlight and slid down low in the seat, watching through the windshield. The person stopped moving. They stood still for a moment between 2 dark buildings, facing nothing, hands hanging by their sides. Then they turned. Not toward me, not toward anything, just slightly rotated their body like a weather vane. Then they walked straight behind one of the buildings and didn't come out the other side. I waited. 10 seconds, 20, a minute, nothing. I climbed back into the sleeper and shut the curtain, but I didn't sleep. Not after that. I just lay there, still and quiet, ears straining. I kept thinking I'd hear footsteps on gravel, or the sound of someone trying the door handle. But the lot stayed silent. The night stretched on. Every minute felt like 5. I didn't check the time. I didn't want to know how many hours until sunrise. I just stayed there, still, until the sky started turning faintly blue. I considered it seriously for a moment, grabbing my flashlight, climbing down, trying to talk to them. Maybe they were hurt. Maybe they were just scared or cold. But something about the whole thing didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just the way they moved. It was how unpredictable it all was. No direction, no pattern, and they never once looked toward my truck, like they were locked in their own world. I stayed in the cab and kept the engine off to avoid drawing attention, just watching them through the windshield. The figure would vanish behind one building and not come out the other side, only to reappear by a rusted pump or near the side of the old garage. It was like they were slipping between places without crossing the space between. Time dragged. I kept my boots on, kept my flashlight close, and sat stiff in the driver's seat, occasionally peeking through the side windows. I didn't doze off. Not once. I was wired the whole time. Around 3:30, I heard a sound, muffled, like speech, but no real words. Just a broken murmur. I leaned forward, straining to hear, but it was too distant and too low. It wasn't talking in the usual sense, more like humming or mumbling to no one. I saw the person again about 20 feet from the corner of the garage. They crouched down and started rocking slightly, arms wrapped around their knees. I stayed quiet. I didn't turn on any lights or open any windows. Eventually they got up again and started pacing in wider, slower circles. At one point, I lost track of them completely for nearly an hour. I thought they might have wandered off for good. But then, around 5:15, I heard a sharp metallic noise like something scraped against the rear fender of my trailer. I turned and stared through the rearview mirror, but couldn't see anything. I opened the curtain behind the seats and stared through the back window. Nothing there. I waited a few minutes, half expecting a knock or another sound, but the lot stayed silent. When I climbed back into the front, I noticed the first faint line of light stretching over the horizon, a dim orange behind the peaks. And then, finally, a pair of headlights appeared coming up the pass. The tow truck was a battered red Freightliner, older than mine, but it pulled up solid and steady. The driver was a guy in his 50s, gray beard, grease under his nails, looking like he'd been up all night too. I climbed down from the cab as he hopped out. We shook hands and he started inspecting the rig. I mentioned the person I'd seen, half expecting him to laugh or dismiss it. But he didn't. Just kind of squinted across the lot and nodded once, slow. "Yeah," he said. "Happens more than you'd think." "You probably saw someone from up the road. Rehab place about 5 miles that way." He pointed over his shoulder up the same road I'd broken down on. "State run. Been there a long time. Folks wander off sometimes. Get confused. Staff finds them by morning usually." He didn't act surprised or concerned. Just matter of fact, like it was routine. I asked if he ever had problems with them, anyone getting aggressive or trying to get into trucks. He shook his head. "Nah, mostly they don't even know where they are. A lot of them are detoxing or off meds. They move weird, yeah, but they ain't trying to hurt anyone. They just get lost. That's all." There wasn't anything left to say about it. He hooked up the front axle, checked the locks, and we got moving. I watched the truck stop shrink behind us in the side mirror, the old buildings growing smaller and darker as the sun started creeping higher. There was still no sign of the person I'd seen all night, just the empty lot, quiet and still. By 8 a.m., I was at a small garage in a nearby town. They ran a diagnostic and confirmed the battery system had failed due to a faulty alternator. Nothing too complicated. I sat in a worn-out lobby chair while they swapped the parts. They had a coffee machine with stale grounds and a little TV showing the news on mute. I tried to relax, but my eyes kept drifting to the parking lot outside, half expecting to see someone in pale clothes wandering across the asphalt. Later that afternoon, I got back on the road. The rest of the drive was uneventful. No more breakdowns, no more strange encounters, just long stretches of highway and silence. But I kept thinking about that night. The way the person never looked at me, never acknowledged my presence once. The weird pattern of movement, like they were stuck in a loop, and how they disappeared before dawn, just vanished like they'd never been there. A few days later, out of pure curiosity, I looked up the rehab facility. It existed, just like the driver said. And they had filed a missing patient report that same night I was stuck at the truck stop. The report said the individual had been located safely the next day around 9 a.m., walking down a dry creek bed 2 miles from the facility. No injuries, no explanation for how they got out. Just a name, an age, and a confirmation they were back under care. I don't know if it was the same person, but the timing matched. I think it probably was. That whole night, I kept wondering whether I should have done something. Called someone, gone out there, tried to talk. But the truth is, I'm glad I didn't. Not because I think they were dangerous, but because I wasn't trained to deal with that kind of situation. That wasn't a moment for me to be a hero or a rescuer. It was a moment to stay put, stay safe, and let the right people handle it. Sometimes helping doesn't mean getting involved. Sometimes it means not making things worse. When I was 17, I worked summers at my uncle's farm in rural Montana. It was hard, dirty work, especially in July, when the heat just clung to you. That day I'd been stacking hay bales for almost 10 hours straight, and by the time the sun started going down, My clothes were soaked through and I could barely keep my eyes open. My uncle offered to let me crash in the barn loft, but I was stubborn back then. I just wanted my own bed, a real shower, and to not wake up with mice crawling on my blanket. So I took my beat-up Honda and started driving back to the trailer I was renting just off Route 83. The roads out there aren't the kind with lights or markers or even shoulders. Just two thin lanes cutting through the dark like a ribbon. I knew them well, but still had to stay alert. Deer, cattle, even the occasional drunk on an ATV had been known to appear out of nowhere. I rolled the windows down, hoping the air would help keep me awake. It didn't. My eyelids kept sliding shut without permission. That's probably why I didn't see the stop sign until I was already halfway through the intersection. I slammed the brakes. Tires screeched. Dust rose. My car came to a jerking halt, and I looked left, headlights inches from my hood. A pickup truck had the right of way and had barely missed plowing into my driver's side. It stopped too, just past me, angled slightly on the dirt. For a second, everything froze, like neither of us could believe it. Then the guy in the truck laid on his horn, long and angry, and rolled his window down. He was yelling before I could even react. I couldn't make out every word, but it was enough. Slurred curses, wild gestures, his face flushed and shiny under the dome light. He was drunk, no question. I threw my hands up, apologizing, nodding like crazy, trying to de-escalate. I slowly reversed a few feet, giving him space. He didn't move, just sat there, engine running, shouting something I couldn't hear. Finally, after what felt like forever, he jerked the truck into gear and started forward again. I exhaled, waited a few beats, then turned onto the road and headed home. About 2 minutes later, I looked in my rearview mirror. The pickup's headlights had reappeared. At first, I told myself it wasn't weird. We were in the middle of nowhere, and lots of folks lived in the same direction. But when I turned right at the junction near the canyon wall, a narrower, steeper road that barely saw any traffic, he turned too. That road wound along a series of tight switchbacks, with the guardrail barely holding back a 100-foot drop. You don't take that road unless you live off it. He didn't just follow, he sped up. I saw the truck's headlights bounce as he floored it over a dip in the pavement. I pressed the gas a little harder myself, trying to stay calm. But his lights kept getting closer, way too close. The distance between us shrank from 3 car lengths to 1 in seconds. My rear view was filled with glare. He swerved a little, enough for me to see him leaning over his wheel, still yelling, gesturing wildly with one hand. I don't think he was even thinking clearly. If I'd braked suddenly, he would have rear-ended me for sure. I took the next bend too fast and the tires squealed. Dust kicked up along the edge of the road and I caught a glimpse of the canyon below, just dark, open space. There were no streetlights, just my headlights lighting up sharp turns and sudden cliffs. I eased off the gas for a second, scared I'd lose control. He matched me instantly, keeping tight to my bumper. My hands were sweating. I adjusted my grip, staring straight ahead, not blinking. If I slid off the shoulder, I'd tumble into rocks. If I stopped, I had no idea what he'd do. He flashed his high beams, once, twice, then kept them on. I couldn't see a thing behind me anymore, just blinding white light and the shadow of his grille barely a few feet from my trunk. I leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. My heart was thudding so hard I could feel it in my ears. At the next turn, I tapped the brakes just enough to slow, then punched the gas on the straight. My car groaned but held. The truck surged forward again, closing the gap. I thought about turning off into one of the dirt pull-offs, but most of them led to nowhere. Just ranch access trails or abandoned sheds. No cell service either. Even if I ditched the car and ran, where would I go? He honked again. A short, aggressive blast this time. I kept my eyes on the yellow center line, trying to remember how many more turns until the bridge. There was a ranger station half a mile after that, closed at night, but at least there was a chance of a working payphone or maybe even a passing car. The truck swerved left suddenly, crossing the line. For a second he was alongside me, his window down, face twisted in some kind of grin. Then he pulled back behind me again, swerving wildly. I realized he was drunker than I thought, or just that unhinged. I spotted the wooden guardrail on the right that marked the start of the bridge. It was narrow, only one car at a time. I sped up, crossed it, and didn't slow. A sign came up on my left for a turnout. I jerked the wheel, swung into it hard, tires skidding on gravel. My headlights caught a small wooden shed, the ranger post, dark and empty. Behind me, the truck flew past the turnout, not slowing, still chasing where he thought I was headed. The road narrowed even more ahead, winding sharply with loose gravel patches and uneven pavement. I eased off the gas, trying to keep the car steady, but the truck behind me didn't let up. He gunned his engine and rammed into my bumper, hard. The impact jolted my whole body forward into the seatbelt. My tires skidded a little, and for a second, I thought I was going over the edge. I swerved slightly to the left, tires grinding on the road's edge, trying to avoid the drop. Then came the sound. Sharp, echoing, cracking through the canyon walls. I thought it was fireworks at first, but it wasn't. It was gunfire. I saw him lean out of the driver's side window, holding a long-barreled rifle. He wasn't aiming directly at me, just pointing it upward, firing into the air. The shots were erratic, but deliberate. He wanted to make a point. My stomach turned cold. I ducked instinctively and kept my hands tight on the wheel, trying to process my options. My headlights lit up a yellow road sign warning of a tight curve ahead, and just past it, the steepest drop-off on this road. I knew that turn. One bad move, and you were gone. No guardrail, no trees, just a sheer canyon drop. I had seconds to decide. As I approached the curve, I hit the brakes. Hard. My tires locked up for a second, skidding on the gravel. Behind me, the truck driver had been too close, going too fast. He didn't have time to react. His front bumper slammed into my rear with a crunching impact. My car swerved slightly, but I corrected the wheel fast and managed to keep it on the pavement, grinding to a stop on the dirt shoulder. The truck didn't stop. It swerved sideways from the impact, momentum carrying it past me. I watched its taillights fishtail, then tilt, then vanish over the side. I heard metal crumpling, the truck rolling down into the ditch below. Then silence. No gunshots. No engine. Just the sound of gravel settling. I sat there in the dark, both hands frozen on the wheel, heart pounding like it was trying to break through my ribs. My car was half on the shoulder, half on the road, still running. I turned it off and stepped out, legs stiff, knees shaking. There was a slope down off the road. I followed it slowly, flashlight in hand. The truck was maybe 20 feet down, resting on its side against a cluster of rocks. Steam hissed from the radiator. The windshield had shattered. One of the doors was bent in, but I saw movement through the cracked window. The guy was alive, blood on his forehead, dazed, but trying to move. His rifle was lying in the dirt about 6 feet from the truck, out of reach. I didn't go near him. I didn't say anything either. I just turned and climbed back up the hill to the roadside. I looked around and spotted a wooden sign for a rest area about a quarter-mile down the road. I got in my car, drove slow, and pulled into the empty lot. There was an emergency phone on a post by the bathrooms. I lifted the receiver and pressed the red button. "Emergency services. The voice came on fast. I gave them the location, said there'd been a crash, and that the driver had a weapon. They asked if I was hurt. I said no. They told me to stay put and wait for responders. It took about 20 minutes. First the sheriff's deputy, then paramedics, and finally a highway patrol unit. I pointed them to the spot on the road. They found him still in the cab, conscious, but not moving much. He had a broken arm and a lot of bruising. Nothing fatal. The paramedics loaded him up. He didn't say a word the whole time. Later, after giving my statement, the officer told me they found 6 empty beer bottles in his truck, one still half full on the passenger seat. The rifle was registered, but it didn't matter. Firing it while drunk and chasing someone down a canyon road wasn't going to play well. They charged him with DUI, reckless endangerment, illegal discharge of a firearm, and a few other things I can't even remember. I learned later from the sheriff that he was a known problem. 3 past DUIs, 2 assault charges, and a suspended license he ignored. He did 6 months in jail, then probation. They revoked his license for life. I went back to work on the farm 2 days later. Didn't say much to my uncle about it. Didn't sleep great for a while either. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw headlights in the rearview mirror. I kept thinking what would have happened if I hadn't braked when I did. If I'd lost control for even half a second. If the truck had rolled a different way. That one mistake at the stop sign almost cost both of us everything. I think about that now every time I drive. Especially on quiet roads. Especially when they seem empty. Because you never know who's behind you, or what they're capable of. So when I was driving through rural Kentucky with my 8-year-old daughter last fall, we noticed something unusual near an old farmhouse. It was one of those long 2-lane highways that cuts through empty fields and scattered tree lines. The kind where you can drive for 20 minutes without seeing another car. The sun had just started to dip below the horizon, throwing everything into that weird orange-gold haze. My daughter was in the back seat, humming something to herself when she suddenly said, "Daddy, look, there's police." I glanced to the right and saw it too. A police car with its lights flashing, parked right on the front lawn of a weathered old house. The farmhouse looked abandoned at first glance, windows dark and boards slumping, but 2 elderly people stood on the porch. They weren't talking, just watching something intently off to the side of the house. I slowed down. My daughter leaned toward the window, squinting to see better. She asked what was happening, and I told her I didn't know. Probably just a little accident or something. But I was already wondering. Off to the side of the house, near the edge of a small drainage ditch, I saw a figure. A police officer, crouched down in the grass, tugging something up from the water. My first thought was maybe a deer or dog got hit and rolled in, but the shape didn't look like an animal. I slowed more, just enough to get a better look without being too obvious. It definitely looked human. I passed by slowly and then kept driving. After about a quarter mile, I pulled into a gravel side road and turned around. My daughter asked what we were doing, and I just said we were making sure everything was okay. Truth was, I didn't know why I turned back. Something about the scene didn't sit right. On our second pass, I drove even slower. The sun was nearly gone now, just a sliver of red behind the trees. The farmhouse, in that fading light, looked even more run down. Peeling paint, vines crawling up the sides, porch sagging in the middle. The 2 older folks on the porch hadn't moved. They just stood there, staring at the same spot beside the ditch. This time, I got a better look at the police car. It was odd. Not the usual black and white cruiser you see on the roads. This one looked older, maybe 70s era. Square body, old-style red and blue light bar on top. It was running, lights flashing in a slow, steady rhythm, but no sound, no siren. The officer was still there, half kneeling in the grass, tugging at what was definitely a person. A man, shirtless, arms limp, dark pants soaked through. He looked heavy, dead weight, kind of heavy. I didn't see blood, but his head hung back in a way that didn't seem right. The officer, if that's what he was, wore a uniform that didn't match anything I'd seen. Dark blue with a high collar, some kind of shiny buttons, and a hat that looked like it belonged in a museum. My daughter leaned forward again and whispered, "Is he okay?" "I don't know," I said, more to myself than to her. What bothered me was the lack of urgency. No ambulance, no paramedics, not even another squad car. Just the old cruiser, the couple on the porch, and this one cop pulling a body out of a muddy ditch like it was routine. The couple wasn't distressed. They weren't crying, shouting, even gesturing. Just standing there, calm, like they'd seen this before. I kept driving past again, slower than I should have, but I didn't stop. My daughter turned to me and asked, "Was that man dead?" I told her I wasn't sure, and she got quiet after that. I drove another mile before pulling over completely and sitting there with the engine running. Something felt off. I've seen accidents before, even once saw a guy get hit by a truck out on Route 11. But there was always commotion. Always more than one person doing something. Radioing in, putting up flares, yelling for help. But there, nobody moved. It was like a staged scene. Something frozen. I thought about driving back again. Maybe stop this time, ask the couple what happened, if they needed anything. But something held me back. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I felt like we'd interrupted something, and weren't supposed to be there. Instead, I pulled back onto the road and kept driving. I told myself I'd call it in once we got into town, let the local police know what we'd seen, just in case it hadn't been reported. But by the time I got back to decent cell service, my daughter had fallen asleep in the back, and I started second-guessing myself. Maybe it was just a weird traffic fatality out in the sticks, handled by a department that hadn't upgraded their gear in decades. Maybe the ambulance had come and gone. Maybe it was nothing. But then I remembered something. When I first passed the house, I didn't hear anything. No chatter on a radio. No dispatcher voice coming from the cruiser. No voices at all. Even the flashing lights made no sound. And when I slowed to a crawl that second time, I swear the cop didn't look up. Not once. Just kept pulling. And the couple didn't blink. Just watched. I drove a bit further down the road and turned around again, telling my daughter I just wanted to see if maybe an ambulance had arrived. I didn't say out loud how much the whole thing bothered me, how off it felt. The weird old cop car, the couple who never moved, the way no one seemed in a hurry. It had a staged feel to it. Too quiet. Too slow. Too perfect in a way that didn't feel real. I told myself maybe I was overthinking it. Rural departments probably looked different. Maybe they did things their own way. Still, something tugged at the back of my brain like a warning. We pulled up to the same spot again, third time around. I slowed nearly to a stop, expecting at least to see the house again. Maybe an ambulance, maybe the couple still there. But it was gone. All of it. No car in the yard. No officer in the grass. No couple. The porch was empty. The ditch beside the house looked undisturbed. The entire property just looked normal. Empty lawn, sun now fully set behind the trees, shadows deepening across the ground, like nothing had ever happened. I even pulled off to the shoulder and let the car idle while I stared at the scene. My daughter leaned toward the window. "Daddy," she said, "where did they all go?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the house. Same sagging porch, same boarded up side windows, but none of the strange presence it had before. The air didn't even feel heavy anymore. I scanned the yard for tire tracks, footprints, anything out of place. There was nothing. No red-blue reflection, no sign of recent activity. It looked like no one had been there in weeks. I finally said, "I don't know." And that was the truth. She didn't say anything else after that, just sat back quietly. I took one last look and pulled away. The ride back into town was quiet. I kept checking the rearview mirror like I expected to see that old police cruiser behind us, but the road was empty. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd missed something obvious, that maybe I should have stopped earlier, gotten out, asked questions. But now it was just an empty house behind us. We got home a little after dark, and I helped my daughter get ready for bed. She didn't bring it up again until the next morning, over cereal, when she asked, "Do you think that man is okay?" I told her I didn't think it was real. Maybe it was just people practicing something. I didn't really believe that, but I didn't want to scare her. The next day, I called the sheriff's office for that county. I told the dispatcher I'd seen some kind of emergency near a farmhouse off the highway, gave the exact road, the closest intersection, everything I could remember. She was polite but confused. Said there hadn't been any incidents reported in that area. No calls, no dispatches, nothing logged for the past few weeks. I asked if maybe it was from another agency, state troopers or someone else, but she said no one had been working that stretch of highway recently. She asked again for the address, and I described the house in detail. She got quiet for a second, and then said, "Sir, are you sure it was that house? That place hasn't had anyone living in it for years." I thanked her and hung up. I still didn't know what to make of it. I kept going over it in my head, trying to remember if there was any detail that would make sense. Maybe it was a movie shoot, but there was no crew, no cameras, no signs. And who uses a decades-old police car in vintage uniforms without even marking off the road or setting up cones? My daughter swore she saw everything I did. Same flashing lights, same old couple, same limp body being pulled out of the ditch. It wasn't just me imagining things. And yet, there was nothing. No official record, no confirmation, not even a local rumor. A few weeks went by. I didn't talk about it again until I was having coffee with a friend who lives in that part of the county. I told her about the strange scene we saw by the farmhouse, leaving out the weirder parts at first. I figured she'd think I was exaggerating. But as soon as I mentioned the police car and the couple on the porch, she laughed. "Oh," she said, "you saw one of the reenactments." I asked her what she meant. She told me that a historical group in the area does educational demonstrations sometimes. Reenactments of old police scenes or criminal investigations from the region's past. They get access to old uniforms, antique patrol cars, even use real properties when the owners allow it. She said they film them sometimes for the local museum or school programs. Apparently the farmhouse matched some old case from the 70s, and they liked using it as a backdrop. She figured when they saw me drive by more than once, they packed up to avoid causing a scene. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or stupid. It made sense. It explained everything. The quiet, the calm, the outdated uniforms and car, even the eerie lack of urgency. It was all for show. A scene from the past, staged like it was happening live. I guess we just drove into it at the wrong moment, or the right moment, depending how you look at it. I told my daughter a couple days later, and she laughed about it too. She said, "I thought it was real." I told her, "Me too." Still, I catch myself thinking about it sometimes. Not in a scared way, just curious. How close we were to believing something terrible had happened, when it was all just pretend. I guess it showed me how easy it is to misread something when you don't know the context, and how quick your brain is to fill in the blanks when the pieces don't quite fit. So when I was 15, I met Derek through mutual friends at a party. He was 18 and seemed really understanding about my depression. At first, he would text me every day, asking how I was feeling, and actually listened when I talked about my problems. My friends thought he was sweet, and my parents liked that he was more mature than guys my age. He talked differently from the guys at school, more serious and grown up. He asked about my future and told me he wanted to help me feel better. I remember thinking he really saw me. We would talk for hours at night, mostly over text, sometimes on the phone. It got to a point where I felt like he was the only one who really understood me. After 2 months of dating, he started getting weird about my phone. He would ask who I was texting, and if I didn't respond immediately, he'd follow up with things like, "Are you ignoring me?" or "Why don't I matter as much as your other friends?" It didn't feel like a big deal at first, just him caring a lot. But it started happening more often. If I didn't answer right away during class, I'd have 10 missed messages from him and maybe a "or cool" as the last one. He once texted me non-stop for an hour while I was hanging out with my cousin at the mall. When I called him later, he asked me why I didn't invite him and said he would have come if I cared. He also started acting different when I mentioned my friends. If I said I was going to the park or a movie with them, he'd say things like, "I guess I don't matter then," or "I thought we were close, but whatever." I began feeling like I had to include him in everything. When I hung out with people without him, I felt guilty. He made me feel like I was being selfish. One time I went to a friend's birthday party and didn't invite him because it was supposed to be just us girls. He texted me through the whole thing and said he felt abandoned. I left early because I felt bad. After that, he started calling my friends fake and said they didn't care about me like he did. I started seeing them less. It seemed easier that way. My world was shrinking, and I didn't notice how fast. Derek started showing up at places where I would be without telling me first. One day I walked into the coffee shop where I always did homework and found him sitting at a table like he'd been waiting. He smiled and said he figured I'd be there. I didn't even think it was weird at first. I smiled back. But then it started happening a lot. He waited outside my classes after school. He came to the bus stop near my house and acted surprised to run into me. When I asked him why he was there, he said, "What? I'm not allowed to want to see you?" I felt like I had no space, but I didn't know how to explain it. It was always framed like a nice thing, like he just cared so much. He started pressuring me to do things I wasn't comfortable with. He said stuff like, "I've been patient for months," or, "If you really loved me, you'd prove it." I said no, and he'd act like I slapped him, get real quiet or leave without saying anything. Sometimes he'd text me later saying he was sorry. But then the next day, it would happen again. The guilt trips got worse. He'd bring up everything he did for me, how he listened to my problems and stayed up late to talk. He said he could have been with other girls but chose me, that he was putting in effort and I wasn't. I tried to tell him we needed to slow down. He just stared at me and said, "So you don't care about us at all then?" I remember that exact sentence because of the way he said it, like he already knew the answer and just wanted to watch me say it. I started feeling anxious all the time. I checked my phone constantly so I wouldn't miss his messages. My heart would pound when I saw his name pop up. I stopped going to the library after school because I didn't want him showing up. I felt watched, even when I was alone. My grades slipped. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Teachers asked if everything was okay, and I said I was tired. My mom noticed too. She said I seemed more withdrawn, asked if I was eating enough or if something was bothering me. I told her I was fine. I was scared if I said anything, she'd make me stop seeing him, and that would make things worse. I told myself I could fix it if I just tried harder, if I was more careful with my words. I thought maybe it was my fault for being too sensitive. I didn't know what was normal. I just knew that nothing felt right anymore. After 4 months, I finally worked up the courage to break up with Derek over text because I was afraid to do it in person. I kept it short and said I didn't feel safe anymore and needed space. Within 5 minutes, he started calling me over and over until I blocked his number. Then he began calling from other numbers. I blocked those too. That night, around 10, I heard knocking at the front door. I looked through the peephole and saw him standing there with his hands in his pockets. I froze. My dad came over and asked who it was, then opened the door and told him to leave immediately. Derek didn't say anything at first. Just stood there looking at the ground. Then he asked to talk to me. My dad raised his voice and said, "Leave now, or I'm calling the police." That worked. Derek turned around and walked back down the street. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I started receiving messages from Instagram accounts with no profile picture or name. They only had 1 follower and were following nobody. At first, it was just things like "nice shoes today," or "you looked tired in second period." Then I got one that said, "that red hoodie doesn't hide you." I wore a red hoodie that day. Then a photo came through. It was of me walking to my car after school. I looked behind me, alone in the parking lot. I showed my parents right away. We went to the school counselor and she called in the principal. They told us to report it to the police. An officer came to the house and took screenshots of everything. He said they'd try to track the IPs, but that it was hard when the accounts were brand new and private. I deleted Instagram, but it didn't stop. The messages moved to email, then my phone number. Texts from unknown numbers started popping up, saying things like, "You look better when you smile," and "I'll see you after gym class." They knew exactly when I was alone, when I walked from one class to another without friends, or when I stayed late for makeup tests. I began looking over my shoulder constantly. I saw a white van parked across the street from our house several times that week. It didn't have plates on the front, and the windows were dark. Sometimes it left when my dad pulled into the driveway. I pointed it out to him, and he started parking behind me so I wouldn't be alone outside. My parents began driving me to school every day. My mom even waited outside when I walked from class to the car. But the messages got worse. They became detailed. They told me what they wanted to do. One said, "You won't be able to scream when I finally get inside." Another had a photo of my bedroom window taken from outside, the blinds barely closed. I hadn't told anyone that I sometimes forgot to pull them down all the way. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I moved a dresser in front of the window and started sleeping with the lights on. My parents installed cameras and motion sensors. I didn't go anywhere alone. I stopped eating. I couldn't focus in class. I barely spoke. I was afraid to close my eyes. Every night felt like waiting for something to happen. I would hear creaks and imagine someone standing just outside the house. Then one night, 2 weeks after it all began, I received an email from an account that didn't even try to hide what it was. No name, no text in the body. Just an image attachment. I opened it. It was a screenshot of a listing on some kind of marketplace. My face was at the top. Underneath it said, "Real, young, available, pickup only," and listed my home address, my school, and a breakdown of my schedule by the hour. There were numbers below it. Bids. People were bidding on me. Like I was nothing. I dropped the phone and ran to the bathroom. I locked the door and threw up in the sink. My mom knocked and asked what was wrong. I didn't answer. I couldn't speak. That night I waited until everyone went to bed. I got up, went to the kitchen, and took everything I could find from the medicine cabinet. Painkillers, sleep aids, cold medicine, muscle relaxers from my dad's back injury. I swallowed until I couldn't anymore. Then I went to my room and lay on the floor. I thought it would be over soon. I didn't even cry. I just wanted everything to stop. My mom found me because I'd left the cabinet open. I don't remember what happened after that. I woke up in a hospital bed with a tube in my arm and a nurse writing something down. I stayed in a psychiatric hospital for 4 weeks. I wasn't allowed to have my phone. I wasn't allowed to be alone. Every day someone came in to ask questions, therapists, detectives, nurses. The police said the accounts were all created using public Wi-Fi. Coffee shops, libraries, places with no cameras, no names, no clues. They couldn't prove anything. They never arrested Derek. They never found out who sent the messages or posted that listing. It could have been him. It could have been someone he knew. I'll never know. When I got out, I didn't go back to my old school. My family moved to a different part of the state. I changed my phone number, deleted all social media, and don't go anywhere without telling someone. I still check the locks 5 times before bed. Sometimes I wake up thinking I hear someone outside my window. Nothing ever happened after that. No new messages, no photos, no threats. But I still don't feel safe. I don't think I ever will. When I was 22, me and 3 friends used to hang out at this abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Tucson. The place had been empty for years, and nobody ever bothered us there. We set up a makeshift hangout spot in the basement ventilation area, where we could smoke and blast music without anyone hearing. The building was massive, with multiple levels, but we only used the small section we had claimed as ours. Mike had found the place first through his older brother who used to skateboard there. We'd been using it as our spot for about 6 months without any problems. The basement stayed cool even in summer and felt like our own private clubhouse. We'd drag in camping chairs, a couple old crates for tables, and rigged up some power from a car battery Mike's cousin gave him. Sometimes we brought down his little speaker setup and just chilled there all night. We'd sneak in through a broken service entrance on the north side and make our way down this half-collapsed stairwell to the basement. It smelled like rust and damp concrete, but it was quiet and hidden. If anyone had ever been there before us, they didn't leave much behind. A few graffiti tags, some broken pallets, nothing serious. It became kind of our routine. Friday nights after work or class, sometimes even midweek if we were bored. Bring a couple beers, some snacks, light up, and talk crap for hours. It was probably the most relaxed I've ever been in my life, looking back now. There was this low rectangular opening in the ventilation wall that led into a long, narrow duct space. It wasn't part of the main structure, just a weird in-between area filled with concrete supports and rusted piping. That's where we set up our chairs. No one could see or hear us down there, even if they walked right above. Sometimes it felt like the world didn't even exist when we were down there. It was like time stopped the moment we crawled inside. We joke about turning it into a YouTube set or a podcast studio. but none of us were really serious about it. It was just a place to be alone, together. Safe, in a weird way. One winter night in 2019, we were down there as usual when we heard weird noises coming from the far end of the basement. At first, we thought it might be other people who had discovered the place. The sounds were rhythmic, like machinery running, but we'd never heard anything like that before. We turned down our music to listen better, and the noises continued. There was also what sounded like muffled voices having a conversation. It didn't sound close, but definitely not distant either. Like 2 or 3 rooms away through the walls. Kind of echoey, but real. None of us had ever explored that part of the building because it looked structurally unsafe. The main support beams were cracked, and there was water damage everywhere from old pipe leaks. The floor in some areas was soft with mildew, and we always figured it was better not to risk it. We joked once about bringing a flashlight and doing a full sweep, but it never felt worth it. But that night, we were all frozen, just listening. Mike whispered, "You guys hear that, right?" We nodded. We all heard it. The soft mechanical sound, almost like gears or a motor starting and stopping, and then the voices. Not yelling, not laughing, just talking. Calm, but consistent. It went on for maybe 5 minutes, and none of us moved. Then it stopped. Just silence again. We sat there for a while, staring down the hallway that led deeper into the basement. The thing is, that hallway had always given me a weird feeling. It was completely dark beyond the first 10 feet. We'd never walked down it. The place had no light back there. No windows, no functioning bulbs, just darkness and crumbling cement. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how strange it was to hear something that far in. There was no power in the building, at least none that we knew of. Whatever was making that rhythmic sound wasn't supposed to be working. Jake, the quietest of our group, stood up. "I think we should check it out." We all looked at him. He wasn't the type to say that kind of thing. Usually he kept to himself, especially when we were stoned. But he sounded alert, not scared, not joking, just firm. Mike shook his head. "Dude, no, that place is falling apart." But Jake was already pulling out his phone flashlight. "Just to the corner. I just want to see." I didn't want to go. Neither did Rob, but we followed anyway. Mike stayed back with our stuff. The hallway was narrow and uneven, the walls stained from old leaks and patches of mold. I had to step around debris, chunks of drywall, rusted rebar, and a sagging length of wire that hung from the ceiling like a vine. The farther we walked, the colder it got. Not just cool like the rest of the basement, but sharp and biting. Jake held the light up and kept going, steady. At about 30 feet in, he stopped. I came up beside him. There was a door. It was metal, old, and slightly ajar. The frame looked warped from water damage, but the door wasn't rusted like everything else. It looked clean, like it had been opened recently. Jake pointed the light at the floor. There were faint marks in the dust, shoe prints, fresh. I glanced at Rob. He was frozen behind us, eyes wide. Jake looked like he was about to push the door open, but I grabbed his arm. "Let's go back," I said. "Seriously." He didn't argue. We backed up slowly, retracing our steps. I kept checking behind us until we reached the entrance of the hallway and could see Mike sitting in the vent room, watching us nervously. When we got back, we didn't say much, just packed our stuff up and left. As we climbed out through the collapsed stairwell, I glanced back one last time. I could swear I saw the edge of that hallway, a faint glow coming from where the door had been, like a flashlight left on, steady and still. After debating for 20 minutes, we decided to check out what was making the noise. It wasn't a decision any of us made lightly. Mike wanted to stay behind again, but we convinced him to come with us this time. There was something about being split up that didn't feel right anymore. We grabbed our phones, turned on the flashlights, and followed the hallway deeper into the maintenance corridors. The air changed as soon as we passed the broken railing that marked the edge of our usual spot. It got heavier, like a basement that had been sealed off for years. Every breath brought this sharp, chemical smell that burned the back of my throat. I saw Jake cover his mouth with his sleeve. Rob whispered, "What the hell is that?" Nobody answered. The deeper we went, the more the walls changed. The normal dust and mold gave way to fresh paint, new tags, strange symbols in black and red, not just regular graffiti. These looked deliberate. Markings, almost like logos or warnings, but none of us recognized them. They were too clean, too recent. It didn't match the rest of the building. We kept going until the corridor opened up. There was a low hum of electricity, the buzz of fluorescent lights, and voices, low and steady, talking about timing and levels. Through a cracked door, we saw an overhead light flickering and the outline of a wide room just beyond. A sheet of heavy-duty plastic was hanging over the entrance like a curtain. The edges were smudged and dusty, but behind it we could see shadows moving around. Tools clanked. Something hissed. I pulled the plastic just enough to peek inside. The room was big, too big to just be a maintenance space. The concrete walls had been scrubbed down, wires were stapled along the ceiling, and metal shelves lined the walls. Long folding tables had been set up in rows. We saw 3 people working, 2 men and a woman, all wearing respirators, gloves, and full coveralls. They weren't just hanging out. This was organized. They had a full operation going. One of them was bent over a table, stirring a thick yellow liquid inside a big glass container. Another was pouring white powder into small plastic baggies, carefully weighing each one on a digital scale. The third was moving between them, checking clipboards and adjusting timers. Their movements were fast, but exact, like they'd done this 100 times. I could hear them talking, stuff like batch yield and cooling cycle. Every corner of the room looked like it had a purpose. They even had air vents with filters and fans taped in place. It wasn't improvised. It was set up to last. Then I noticed the cameras. Little black domes stuck into the ceiling corners, all pointing toward entrances. One of them was pointed right above the plastic sheeting we were peeking through. I stepped back fast and pulled the others away from the edge. "Cameras," I whispered. "They might have seen us." Rob's eyes widened. Jake just mouthed, "Shit." We didn't run. That would have made noise. Instead, we turned around and walked, slow and quiet. Every footstep felt like it echoed too loud. I kept looking behind us, expecting someone to burst through the plastic with a flashlight and a gun. But no one came. When we finally reached our little room, we didn't say a word. We packed everything, speakers, snacks, charger cables, and shoved it all into Mike's duffel bag. The air still smelled like chemicals, even back there. My throat was burning. Nobody laughed. Nobody talked. We just got out. Back up the collapsed stairs, out the service door, and into the cold air of the parking lot. It was after midnight and dead quiet outside. I didn't look back until we were halfway down the block. No one had followed. The next day, I used a payphone across from a bus station and called the cops. I didn't give my name. I told them the address, the entrance point, and what part of the building to check. I gave them everything I remembered and then hung up. A week later, the story hit local news. Tucson police raid industrial drug lab. 4 people arrested, including one with a record in New Mexico. They showed footage of the warehouse, same side entrance, Same cracked stairwell. The lab was dismantled. Tables, chemicals, masks, all seized. The story said the place had been under surveillance for a while. I don't know if that was true, or if they were just covering up the fact that someone had tipped them off. We never went back. We found a new place, some overgrown lot behind a mechanic's shop on the west side. It wasn't the same. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't ours, and it didn't feel safe. But we made do. Sometimes I think about that night, and what would have happened if one of those people had stepped outside to smoke, or if the cameras had picked up our faces clearly, or if they had dogs or worse. I think about how close we were, less than 15 feet, to something that could have ended a lot different. We didn't belong down there, and I guess we were lucky to walk away before anyone noticed. We all stopped talking about the warehouse after that. Mike threw away the old duffel bag. Jake blocked off the GPS marker he'd saved. Rob deleted the pictures he took inside. I still remember it, though. I still see those chemicals bubbling, those bags being sealed, the silent tension in the air like it was holding its breath. And I still wonder what would have happened if we had stayed 1 minute longer. When I was 13, I spent a week at my grandfather's old house in Maine while my parents were out of town. Grandpa had been living there alone since my grandmother died 2 years earlier. The house was built in the 1940s and had that old wood smell that never seemed to go away. It creaked a lot, especially in the mornings and at night when the temperature shifted. Grandpa slept downstairs on the couch because of his knees and told me I could pick any room upstairs for the week. There were 3 bedrooms, but I picked the one at the end of the hall. It had a big window that looked out into the woods behind the house. During the day, the sun came through and lit up the whole room, and at night you could see the moon between the trees if the clouds didn't roll in. The first few nights were quiet. I fell asleep fast and didn't think much of anything. Grandpa went to bed around 9 and usually woke up before me. I spent most of the day reading or exploring the backyard and sometimes walking a bit into the woods, but not far. Grandpa warned me to stay where I could still see the house. He wasn't strict or anything, just didn't want me getting lost or running into some animal. There was a small trail that led away from the backyard, but I never followed it more than a few minutes. It got too dense, and I didn't like not being able to see the roof of the house. At night, I watched TV with Grandpa before heading up around 10 or so. Nothing weird happened for the first 3 nights. On the 4th night, I woke up suddenly and didn't know why at first. The house was dark and still, but then I heard it. Footsteps, slow and steady, creaking along the hallway outside my room. Not like someone running or stumbling, but a careful, deliberate walk. It sounded like an adult, and I assumed it was Grandpa coming upstairs for something. Maybe he left something in one of the bedrooms, or had to check a window. I waited to hear his voice or see the light come on in the hallway, but neither happened. The steps came closer and stopped right outside my door. I sat up in bed and listened. I thought maybe Grandpa was about to knock or open the door, but he didn't. I said, "Grandpa," but there was no answer. The footsteps had stopped completely. I waited a few more seconds, then said it louder. "You okay?" Still nothing. I got out of bed and walked over to the door, opened it slowly, and looked down the hallway. It was pitch black. I couldn't see much except the faint blue light from the moon coming in through the window at the end of the hall. There was nobody there. I looked both ways, checked the floor, the stairs. Nothing. I didn't hear anything either, not even the sound of Grandpa going back down. I walked to the top of the stairs and leaned over the banister. The living room light was off, but I could hear the TV. It was turned down low, like it always was when Grandpa dozed off in front of it. I figured maybe he hadn't come upstairs after all, and I just imagined the footsteps in my sleep. I went back into the bedroom and closed the door. I didn't lock it because it didn't have a lock, just an old metal knob that clicked shut. I climbed back into bed and laid there staring at the ceiling. The hallway had been quiet, and there was no sound of anyone moving around. After maybe half an hour, I finally drifted off. That morning I didn't say anything to Grandpa. I thought maybe it was a weird dream, or just the house settling, like people say. But when I checked the hallway in daylight, the old boards outside my room didn't look warped or loose. They were worn, but solid. I stepped on them, and they creaked exactly how I remembered hearing it the night before. Same sound, same pattern. It made me pause, but I still didn't bring it up. Grandpa seemed normal. He made us oatmeal, talked about the Red Sox, and asked if I wanted to go into town later to pick up some groceries. I said sure. We left around noon and came back in the afternoon. Everything felt normal again. But that night, I couldn't fall asleep right away. I kept waiting to hear the footsteps again. I stayed up reading with the lamp on and only turned it off after midnight. I laid in bed, facing the door, listening for every creak. Nothing happened for hours. No steps, no noises. I must have dozed off sometime around 1:30. Then, at exactly 2, I woke up again. This time I heard the footsteps as soon as I opened my eyes. Same rhythm, same slow pace, moving from the top of the stairs toward my room. I stayed perfectly still. I didn't call out, just waited. They reached the door and stopped again. I held my breath, staring at the dark line between the door and the floor, waiting for a shadow to move across it. Nothing. Not a sound. I counted to 60 in my head. Still nothing. I finally whispered, "Grandpa?" Real quiet, just loud enough in case he was standing outside. As soon as I said it, the footsteps stopped completely. Not even a shift in the boards. I waited another minute, then got out of bed, slowly this time, and walked to the door. I opened it just a crack and peeked out. The hallway was empty. Same darkness, same blue moonlight spilling through the far window. No one there. I opened the door wider and stepped out, looking both directions. Still nothing. I walked down to the top of the stairs and looked over. Grandpa was lying on the couch, half covered with a blanket, mouth open, the TV still on low. I stared for a while, then went back to my room and left the door cracked open. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I went downstairs and found Grandpa sound asleep on the couch, exactly where I'd last seen him before going to bed. He had one arm resting on his chest, and the TV remote loosely held in the other hand. His breathing was slow and deep, like he'd been out for a while. I hesitated, watching him for a second, then walked over and gently shook his shoulder. He opened his eyes and blinked at me like he wasn't sure where he was. "What's wrong?" he asked, voice hoarse. I told him about the footsteps, that I'd heard someone walking right up to my door, that I'd opened it and no one was there. He just stared at me a moment before rubbing his eyes. "Didn't hear a thing," he said. "My hearing's not so good anymore, kiddo. Maybe just the house settling. These old places creak all the time." I stood there, waiting for something more, but he just yawned and reached for the blanket. "Could be a raccoon on the roof," he added. "We've had 'em before." I didn't say anything else. I didn't feel like arguing. I just nodded and walked back upstairs. The hallway was silent again. Same cool air, same faint glow from the woods through the window. I left my door open a little and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the hallway for a while before climbing back under the blankets. I didn't sleep much. Every time the house shifted or popped, I flinched. I kept picturing the sound of slow footsteps coming closer, stopping at the door. But it never came again that night. The next morning, Grandpa acted like nothing had happened. He was already up making toast and eggs when I came down. He asked if I wanted juice or milk like it was any other day. I didn't bring it up again. He didn't either. 6 months later, I came back, but I wasn't alone. My 2 younger cousins were visiting from out of state, and we were all staying over at Grandpa's for the weekend. They were both around 9 or 10, full of energy during the day, but once it got dark, they got nervous. They didn't like the old house, said it smelled weird, and that the shadows in the corners were too deep. So when it was time to sleep, we all stayed in the same room at the end of the hall, the one I'd picked before. They didn't want to be alone. We stayed up late playing cards with a flashlight until we couldn't keep our eyes open anymore. Sometime after midnight, I woke up. I don't know what stirred me, but the room was completely still. The only sound was the wind outside moving through the trees. Then I heard it again, the footsteps. Same slow, careful pressure on the old wood. Same steady rhythm. Step, creak, step, creak. The boys must have heard it too because they both sat up under the blankets at the same time. No one said a word. The footsteps came all the way down the hallway and stopped right outside our door. My heart was beating so hard I thought they'd hear it. Then the sound shifted. A slow, deliberate dragging sound scraped down the surface of the wooden door. Long and steady, like someone pulling their nails from the top of the doorframe to the floor. The sound made the hair on my arms stand straight up. No one moved. We sat there, frozen in the dark, barely breathing. The dragging sound stopped at the bottom of the door and didn't start again. For what felt like an hour, nothing happened. I thought about getting up, opening the door, checking the hallway, but I couldn't make myself do it. None of us could. Eventually, I drifted off from exhaustion with the blanket pulled up to my ears. The next morning, we didn't talk about it. The boys were quiet over breakfast, and Grandpa didn't ask why. I could tell from the look on his face that he knew something had happened. He didn't press. After that night, I stopped staying overnight at Grandpa's house. I made excuses when my parents brought it up. I had a school project, or I didn't feel well, or I already had plans with a friend. When I did have to visit, I always left before it got dark. I stopped going upstairs alone. Even if I forgot something in one of the bedrooms, I'd ask someone to come with me or just leave it behind. Years later, after Grandpa passed, we came back to clean out the house. Everything was dusty and quiet. The TV was still there, and the same blanket folded on the couch. The upstairs hadn't changed at all. The hallway still had that same soft, damp wood smell, and when I walked down it, every floorboard creaked the way I remembered. One afternoon, while we were loading boxes into the truck, the woman from next door came over. She was in her 80s and moved slow with a cane, but she remembered everything. We talked a while, and eventually she asked if we ever had any trouble in the house. I said no, not really, and she just smiled like she didn't believe me. She told us the man who lived there before Grandpa had suffered from dementia in his last few years. Said he would wander the house at night, confused, not recognizing where he was. He walked the same path every night, she said, upstairs, down the hallway, pause outside each door, then turn around and go back. He did it for years, long before he ever left or was taken to a home. I didn't say anything, just nodded and thanked her. But later, I kept thinking about that. The steps in the hall, always stopping at the same place. The way they never turned the doorknob, never pushed it open. Just waited outside, then faded. Some places remember the people who lived in them. Not like a ghost story, just the weight of routines pressed into wood and walls. That house had a memory, and we had walked into it. And even after all the furniture was gone and the doors were locked, I knew the floorboards would still creak in the same places. The hallway would stay quiet until sometime in the night when the steps started again. I was deployed to Afghanistan in 2008 as part of an engineering unit that specialized in finding improvised explosive devices on roads throughout Helmand province. Our job wasn't glamorous, but it was important and dangerous. The Taliban had laid traps for us just about everywhere you could imagine, and some places you couldn't. Our team had been working that area for 3 months and had developed a routine for these missions. Morning briefings, equipment checks, route planning, and then the long hours of slow movement through dusty terrain, scanning for disturbances in the soil or debris that might indicate a bomb. We learned to read the ground like a book. One night in late October, we were pulled into a briefing just before dinner. There'd been reports of planted mines along a route between 2 villages, a narrow stretch of road that traced the same path ancient traders once used. This wasn't just any road. It passed through the remains of an old caravan route that had been used for centuries. Lately, it had become a hot zone for firefights between Taliban fighters and Afghan government troops. Intelligence suggested insurgents were exploiting the ruins for cover and hiding weapons caches in the rock walls and crumbled archways. Command wanted us to confirm whether the reports were real and, if possible, clear the way. We were told outright to expect ambush. The lieutenant didn't sugarcoat it. You'll be walking into a bad spot. Move slow. Keep your heads low. We loaded up just after sundown and rolled out in 2 armored MRAPs. Our team was small, 8 guys total, including our CO, Lieutenant Martinez. He kept quiet most of the time during these rides, just stared out the window through his NVGs. I sat across from Clark, our equipment guy, who was busy checking the batteries on our metal detectors. Nobody said much. We'd all been through enough runs to know that joking before a high-risk op didn't sit right. We reached the outskirts of the area just before midnight. The old caravan trail ran through a shallow valley, with broken stone walls lining both sides and jagged ruins rising out of the earth like busted teeth. We dismounted and went silent, switching to hand signals and radio headsets. Night vision goggles turned everything pale green and flat, but they were better than walking blind. The wind kicked dust up into little spirals and rustled through the broken doorways of the old buildings. It felt like the kind of place you'd want to walk through fast, but that wasn't our job. Martinez had us fan out in a wide formation. He sent Blake and Ortiz up to a ridge overlooking the eastern side of the ruins to watch for movement. The rest of us started sweeping the trail using metal detectors and ground-penetrating radar. I took the center with Clark, while O'Neill and Turner worked the opposite flank. We moved in short, slow steps, our detectors inches from the ground, listening for the high-pitched whine that signaled metal underfoot. Every so often we'd stop, kneel, dig, and check. Usually it was trash, spent casings, rusted cans, scrap wire. But the ruins made it dangerous. So many places to hide, too many shadows, and the way sound bounced around the old stone made it hard to tell where anything was coming from. Martinez kept rotating our position every 15 minutes, never letting anyone stay still too long. He wasn't just cautious, he was smart. He'd been shot at more than once on these kinds of missions. At around 0100, Clark signaled to me. His detector had picked something up near a broken archway that used to be part of a gate. We crouched together and started clearing the topsoil with brushes and gloved hands. About 3 inches down, we found the edge of a metal cylinder. Clark leaned in with his flashlight and whispered, "Looks like an old Soviet mortar shell. Could be rigged." He marked it with red tape and radioed Martinez, who told us to hold position and wait for EOD. While we waited, I glanced toward the archway again. The wind had shifted, blowing more sand off the stone floor. That's when I noticed faint footprints. Not fresh, but not old either. They led toward a low doorway in the ruins and disappeared into darkness. I tapped Clark and pointed. He gave a slow nod. Neither of us liked it. Martinez came over and knelt beside us. "Foot traffic?" he asked. I nodded. He looked at the mortar shell, then the door. "If there's a cache, it'll be inside." He called up to Ortiz and Blake on Overwatch and told them to keep eyes on the western side. Then he waved for O'Neill and Turner to swing around the back of the building while we stayed low at the front. He drew his sidearm. We moved slow, step by step. The doorway was just 4 feet high, made of stone with no actual door attached. Clark switched his NVG for a flashlight and leaned in. I followed, rifle raised. The air inside smelled dry and stale, like stone and old oil. There were crates along the walls, wooden, splintered, and stamped with faded Cyrillic letters. Clark popped one open with a knife. Inside were magazines, most half empty, and wrapped bundles of wire and pressure switches. No doubt about it now. Weapons cache. Martinez stepped back out to radio it in, but before he could, we heard a sudden crack. One sharp report from the ridge above us. Then a second shot, this time closer. We ducked. Clark and I hit the dirt behind the wall as bullets kicked up dust a few feet in front of us. Martinez was already yelling into his radio for covering fire. "Contact North Ridge, 2 shooters, return fire." Blake's voice came through, rough with static. "We've got movement, multiple targets, can't see all of them." The next thing we heard was a burst from a PKM machine gun somewhere above us. Rounds zipped over the ruins, slamming into rock and dirt. Clark crawled to the nearest cover and started shouting coordinates back up to the ridge. Martinez cursed under his breath, then yelled, "We're pulling out! Tag the cache and fall back!" I saw him rise halfway from cover and motion for us to move. His last visible action before a burst of gunfire forced us back behind the archway. About an hour into the operation, we had cleared roughly half of the designated area without finding anything suspicious. The detectors stayed mostly quiet, except for the occasional false signal, usually rusted metal or broken tools buried in the dirt. The further we moved into the ruins, the quieter everything became. Even our footsteps sounded muted. The ancient stones didn't echo the way they should. There was no wind, no insects, no distant gunfire. Just this unnatural quiet, like the air had weight. We were near what looked like a collapsed wall, possibly part of a fortification, when it happened. A scream rang out from the hillside. High-pitched and drawn out, it echoed between the rock walls with such intensity, it felt like it came from every direction at once. It was loud enough to trigger a pain response in my ears even through the headset. Everyone froze. Nobody said a word. Weapons were up instantly. Martinez dropped to one knee and shouted, "Eyes up! Defensive spread!" over the comms. The scream kept going, rising in pitch before it abruptly cut off, leaving a silence so deep it felt like sound had been sucked out of the air completely. We waited, rifles aimed at the ridge. Nothing moved. I scanned the hillside through my scope, expecting a muzzle flash or some form of movement. Nothing. Not even birds took flight. Turner radioed in from the left flank, voice tight. "No visuals. But that wasn't human, sir." No one answered him. The radio was quiet except for static and the sound of our own breathing. I kept my finger on the trigger and my scope locked on a cluster of rocks halfway up the ridge. But there was still nothing. No shadows shifting, no movement, no shots. Martinez didn't wait. "We're pulling back to the vehicles. Stay low, stay fast, watch each other's backs." Go." We moved in staggered pairs, covering each other as we retreated from the ruins. Every few seconds I turned to scan the hillside again, looking for whatever made that sound. I felt my body tense up with every step, waiting for gunfire that never came. The terrain was rough and full of blind corners, but we moved quickly. At the base of the trail, the Humvees came into view. Ortiz and Blake were already there, scanning with their scopes. The rest of us fell in, checking gear, counting heads. We waited. 10 minutes passed. Martinez got back on the radio, contacted base. "Any friendly units operating near Grid 6-2? Negative. No units had been authorized to patrol within 5 kilometers of us. We were alone. Blake asked if he should climb the ridge and check the other side. Martinez told him no. "Nobody goes back up there tonight," he said. "If they're watching us, they'll expect us to come looking. We hold this position until first light." The men nodded, but no one said much. We weren't afraid of combat. We'd all taken fire before. Most of us had seen someone die. But that scream hadn't sounded like anything tactical. It hadn't sounded like a signal flare or a decoy. It had sounded wounded, cornered, angry. The kind of sound a living thing makes when it knows it's dying. None of us slept. We took turns on watch in pairs, eyes fixed on the trail and the shadows between the stones. When the sun started to rise, nobody said they were glad. We just stood up, stretched, and got back to work like we were supposed to. We had a job to finish. We swept the final half of the area slowly, methodically. Clark and I checked the arches and lower levels near the fort ruins. Turner and Ortiz handled the southern flank. Nothing. No wires, no buried shells, no pressure plates or cell triggers. It was clean. The metal detectors didn't beep once the whole final hour. Martinez marked the sweep as complete, radioed it in. Just after noon, we rolled back into the staging area and began the final reporting. That's when some local men came by on foot, elders from one of the nearby villages. They'd heard our vehicles and came to ask what had happened in the night. One of them spoke a little English. He told us that an animal had been seen limping near the ruins. Something big. A boar. Probably injured from one of the airstrikes weeks earlier. He pointed to his own leg and groaned to mimic the sound. "Wounded," he said. "Bad pain." The explanation made sense. From a distance, from a hidden location, an injured boar could have made that awful sound. We noted it in the report. Martinez signed off on it. We submitted the standard clearance paperwork and confirmed the area was free of traps or caches. But none of us were completely satisfied with that answer. Not because it was impossible, but because of the timing. The way the scream echoed, the way it felt when it stopped. That sound, whatever made it, didn't just hit our ears. It got into our heads. Later that week, I found myself thinking about that moment more than I should have. Not the scream itself, but the silence that followed. How the air seemed still. Like it wasn't just our team that froze, but everything. Like time held its breath. We'd cleared dozens of roads, walked into dangerous territory more times than I could count. But that place, those ruins, those ancient stones, felt different. You could tell people had died there long before us. Soldiers, bandits, travelers. Centuries of blood in that dirt. And when that scream echoed off the stones, we weren't just hearing an animal in pain. We were hearing fear. Pure, raw, ancient fear. And it wasn't just theirs. It was ours too. So when Sophia was 8, We lived in a quiet neighborhood where garage sales happened every weekend. That Saturday morning started like any other. I needed some cheap kitchen stuff, and Sophia loved looking at old books. We pulled up to this sale on Chestnut Street around 10 in the morning. Sophia immediately ran to a box of children's books by the garage entrance while I started browsing through dishes and cookware. The woman running the sale seemed busy with other customers, so I didn't pay much attention to her. I kept Sophia in my peripheral vision while examining a set of plates. Everything felt normal and safe in broad daylight with plenty of people around. I had no reason to worry about anything. The garage door was fully open. Tables were spread out on the driveway with everything from old lamps to VHS tapes. Sophia sat cross-legged on the pavement, flipping through a book with a teddy bear on the cover. A couple with a stroller passed by, the baby reaching out for a pinwheel toy on the corner table. Behind them, someone in a blue minivan honked lightly at a car blocking the road. The hum of voices, birds overhead, and the occasional laugh filled the morning air. Nothing about it stood out as strange. A woman in a bright pink jacket approached Sophia while she was reading. She had short gray hair and looked to be in her 50s, nothing threatening about her appearance. I heard her tell Sophia she was the organizer of the garage sale. She seemed friendly and mentioned having a special box of toys for children. Sophia looked excited and glanced over at me for approval. I nodded, thinking this was just another nice gesture from a garage sale host. The woman pointed toward the street and said something about a gift box. I continued looking at kitchen items, occasionally glancing up to check on Sophia. The interaction seemed perfectly innocent at first. Sophia followed her slowly, stopping once to turn around and wave the book at me. I gave her a thumbs up, distracted by a glass mixing bowl with a chip in the rim. I put it back and picked up a colander with one handle bent inward. By the time I looked back again, Sophia was further down the driveway. The woman had moved slightly ahead, pointing to something around the corner of the fence that blocked the view of the neighbor's yard. I put down the colander and took a few steps toward the edge of the table, watching them walk toward the sidewalk. Sophia didn't seem scared, just curious, her steps quickening slightly to keep up. I figured the woman might have a box of toys in her trunk or something. Maybe she stored them out front to keep space clear on the driveway. There was nothing obviously wrong, but I suddenly noticed the pink jacket looked too thick for the warm weather. She walked stiffly, like she was carrying something under it or wearing layers. It was hot that day, high 70s already, and everyone else had short sleeves or tank tops. I wiped my hands on my jeans and called out, "Sophia," just loud enough to break the rhythm of their movement. The woman paused and looked back. She smiled politely, held up a finger like, "Just a second," and pointed again at something out of my view. I stepped around the table and walked toward the edge of the garage. I couldn't see what she was pointing at from there. Sophia turned to me and said, "She's showing me a box of free stuff." Her voice was cheerful, not alarmed, but my chest tightened a little. I walked out onto the driveway. The woman took a step toward the street. I didn't like how fast it all felt, even if nothing exactly bad had happened. I called out again, louder this time. "Wait for me!" Sophia stopped. The woman stood still too, one foot already on the grass strip between sidewalk and curb. Her smile didn't change, but she turned more toward me this time. I walked briskly across the driveway. "We'll come with you," I said, trying to sound casual. The woman nodded. "Sure, it's just right over here," she said. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. She didn't seem surprised or annoyed, just like she was waiting. Sophia reached up to hold my hand. The woman stepped back and pointed again, not at a car trunk or table, but toward a plain cardboard box sitting in the grass near the corner of the fence. It looked out of place. Not on a blanket, not marked with a price. Just a closed box with a ripped side. I crouched beside it and opened the flaps. Inside were a few plastic toys, cheap, grimy-looking ones. A doll missing an arm, a cracked slinky, a stuffed duck with one button eye. Sophia made a face and backed up slightly. "Do you want one?" the woman asked, like she was waiting for us to pick something. "No, thank you," I said, standing up. The woman nodded once and didn't say anything else. Then she walked back toward the garage sale without looking back, just blended into the small crowd. I turned to look for her again 30 seconds later, and she was gone. The woman led Sophia toward the curb, explaining something about a special toy box. I could barely hear them, but I saw Sophia reach down into a cardboard box that was set right next to the sidewalk. It was a cheap-looking thing, half squashed and rain-stained, filled with old toys that looked like they came from a thrift store dumpster. Sophia picked out a small plastic doll and held it up to show me, a smile just starting on her face. That's when the woman bent down and whispered something else to her. Sophia looked up, hesitated, and then nodded. The woman pointed across the street at a white van parked just beyond the row of sale tables and said something about having to register the gift. At first, I didn't understand what that meant. My brain didn't want to make sense of it. Then the woman took Sophia's hand, not loosely like a friendly gesture, but tight, fingers wrapped firmly around hers. It was too much for a stranger. My eyes followed their path as they stepped toward the road, heading straight for the van. I didn't see any signs on the van. No garage sale markings, no business logo, nothing. Just a plain white vehicle with all the windows tinted dark. Sophia looked back once. Not panicked, not scared, but puzzled. Like she wasn't quite sure this was how garage sales usually worked. I started walking faster. Then I started jogging. I was just opening my mouth to yell when someone else beat me to it. "Hey! Hey!" A woman's voice called out sharply from behind. I spun around to see a short woman with gray blonde hair and a yellow apron walking fast toward me and pointing. "That's not one of us. Who is she? What's she doing with your kid?" It was Deborah, the real organizer of the sale. Her voice had this tone, something between panic and fury. Other shoppers turned. The woman in pink didn't turn. She didn't say anything. She just dropped Sophia's hand like it was suddenly burning hot and sprinted toward the van. Sophia stood there frozen in the middle of the street. The passenger door opened before the woman even reached it. I saw a man in the driver's seat lean across and yank the door wider. The woman dove inside, and the van lurched forward, tires screeching slightly against the pavement. I shouted Sophia's name and ran. The van sped off, turning left at the end of the block without stopping. I grabbed Sophia and pulled her back to the curb, holding her so tight I couldn't tell if it was her or me shaking harder. Deborah came running up, already pulling a phone from her apron pocket. "I'm calling the cops," she said. "You okay? You okay, sweetheart?" she added, looking at Sophia. Sophia didn't say anything at first. Her arms were around my neck, and she was squeezing just as hard as I was. Deborah moved away a bit, giving us space while talking to the 911 operator. Other shoppers had stopped what they were doing. A few came closer, asking questions. Some had seen the van. One man said he might have caught part of the license plate. A woman said she'd noticed the pink jacket earlier but assumed the woman was a helper. The police arrived in under 10 minutes. 2 cruisers, lights spinning. One officer went straight to Deborah for her account. The other came to me. He asked my name, Sophia's age. What happened? I told him everything, as clearly as I could with my daughter still clinging to me. They separated us briefly to ask Sophia what the woman said to her. She only spoke quietly, barely audible. She said she had better toys in her car, she whispered. She said we had to go there to write my name on a list. The officer's face went tight. He nodded slowly, then told me this wasn't the first time. Same area. Same description. A woman in a bright jacket, usually pink or red, always working with a man in a van. Approaching children during crowded weekend events. Library fairs, community markets, now garage sales. They'd almost taken a boy from a supermarket parking lot 3 weeks earlier, but the mom had screamed and scared them off. Another time, a little girl got to the van door before someone pulled her back. "We've been trying to catch them," the officer said. "This is the third close call, but this is the first time we've gotten a good vehicle description." This helps a lot. They stayed for a while, taking statements, getting phone numbers, calming Sophia, and talking to the other customers. Deborah gave them her security camera footage from her porch, hoping it caught at least part of the street. I didn't let go of Sophia's hand the entire time. Every time a white van passed by in the distance, I felt my breath freeze up. That night, Sophia wouldn't sleep alone. I didn't even try. She curled up next to me in bed, small and quiet, and woke up crying twice. I held her until she went back to sleep, and then stayed awake listening for every sound outside. A car door, a branch creaking, the soft whine of tires too close to the curb. Every sound felt like a threat now. The nightmares lasted for weeks, for both of us. I kept seeing that woman's hand around my daughter's wrist, that blank white van, that moment when everything felt normal and safe. I thought about what would have happened if Deborah hadn't noticed, if I'd looked away for even one more minute. The police never found them. They ran a segment on the news, shared the story in the neighborhood alert apps. Schools sent out warnings. Parents were told to stay close at all times. Then, after a while, the reports stopped. The woman in the van didn't show up again. But something had changed in me permanently. I no longer believed in safe neighborhoods. I no longer gave strangers the benefit of the doubt just because it was daylight and other people were around. Sophia was never more than a few feet from me after that. Stores, parks, even our front yard. I watched her like a hawk. And I still do. People say things like, "You can't live in fear," but they don't know what it's like to almost lose your child. They don't know how fast it can happen. They don't know what it's like to see a perfectly normal morning turn into the worst moment of your life. I hope they never do. I was 25 and working as a nurse when I decided to try online dating again. Brandon seemed perfect on paper. Successful businessman, good photos, interesting conversations. We texted for about 3 weeks before he suggested meeting for dinner at a romantic restaurant outside the city. I was excited because he seemed different from the usual guys on dating apps. He picked me up in a black Lexus, wore a dark blue button-up, and smelled like expensive cologne. He opened the car door for me and complimented my dress. That gave me a boost of confidence and made me feel like I'd made a good call. The drive started off smooth. He played jazz low on the stereo and asked questions about my job, my favorite foods, places I wanted to travel. I told him about some funny stories from the hospital, and he laughed at all the right parts. I noticed he didn't use GPS, just kept driving confidently, like he knew exactly where we were going. I didn't think much of it at the time. I texted my roommate as we pulled onto the highway, sent her a thumbs-up emoji and a selfie with Brandon in the driver's seat. I had already shared his profile with her earlier and told her to call if she didn't hear from me by 10 p.m., just a routine safety step. About 20 minutes into the drive, I realized we weren't heading toward the restaurant district. Instead, Brandon merged off the main road and took an exit toward an industrial area I didn't recognize. I asked, "Hey, aren't we going the wrong way?" He kept his eyes on the road and said, "Yeah, I just have to stop by my office real quick. I forgot some documents I need for a meeting tomorrow. It'll only take 5 minutes, promise." He said it casually, like it was no big deal. Still smiling, I nodded slowly, trying not to overthink it. The surroundings started changing fast, streetlights thinning out, businesses shuttered, some buildings completely boarded up. He pulled into a narrow alley behind a warehouse. No cars, no lights, just metal siding and dumpsters. "Here we are," he said, cutting the engine. The jazz stopped. The silence hit fast. I looked around, trying not to let my face show how uneasy I felt. I said, "You sure this is your office?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared straight ahead through the windshield. Then he turned to me, and his whole expression changed. The easygoing smile was gone. His face went blank. "Give me your phone," he said. His tone was flat, cold, like he was giving a patient order, not making a request. I froze. He repeated it. "Phone. Now." I reached slowly into my purse, trying not to fumble. I handed it to him, and he powered it off immediately, slipped it into his coat pocket. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice coming out shakier than I meant. He didn't answer. Just looked out the window again like he was waiting for something. Then he said, "Don't scream. Don't run. You'll only make it worse." He didn't look at me when he said it. Just stared out into the dark like he was rehearsing. I scanned the area. Nothing but a chain-link fence, a locked metal door, and a stack of old pallets leaning against a brick wall. I reached for the door handle as quietly as I could. It was locked. He noticed. "Don't," he said, more forceful this time. Still not yelling, but sharp. He unbuckled his seatbelt, shifted slightly to face me, and that's when I saw it. Under his jacket, wedged between the center console and his side, was something black and hard-edged. Not fully visible, but enough for me to guess what it was. "Just sit back," he said. "No one knows you're here." I didn't respond, just tried to control my breathing. He leaned forward and popped open his glove compartment, pulled out a roll of duct tape, tore off a piece and held it out. "Put your hands together," he said. I didn't move. He raised his eyebrows. "You think I won't hurt you?" I kept my hands at my sides. He reached across, fast, and grabbed my wrist. I jerked away, slamming my elbow into the side of the door. The motion startled him, and I used that second to twist the lock open. My fingers fumbled for the handle again, heart pounding so loud it filled my ears. He grabbed for me with both hands, but I threw my weight against the door. It flew open, and I stumbled out, landing hard on my side. I scrambled to my feet, bolted past the pallets, slipped once on the gravel but didn't stop. I could hear him behind me, yelling, something sharp and angry. I didn't look back. There was a side street ahead, faint light from a flickering street lamp. I ran toward it, not knowing where it led, just needing to get away from the alley. My heel snapped off, but I didn't stop. I rounded the corner and saw a gas station up the block, lights on, a car parked out front. I sprinted toward it. Brandon grabbed my arm so hard I could feel the pressure on my bones. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "Not until I get what I came for." His voice was low, but there was something tight and unstable in it. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at the floor mat, trying to control my breathing. My arm stayed still under his grip. He leaned closer. "You think you can play me? I've planned this. I've done this before. I know exactly how this goes." His hand tightened again. "You do what I say. You walk away. You don't. We'll see." He let go of my arm, but kept his eyes on me. I didn't move. I didn't want to trigger anything. He leaned back in his seat and reached into his coat. My pulse jumped, but all he pulled out was a folded piece of paper. "This was going to be clean," he said, "but you had to push it." I asked him quietly, "Can you just take me home? Please. No one has to know. Just take me back and I'll forget everything." He let out a dry laugh. "You think I believe that?" His tone dropped. "Don't scream. Don't run. You scream and I'll shut it down fast, understand?" I nodded. I felt like I couldn't even blink too fast. We were surrounded by concrete walls and metal doors, no windows, no witnesses. I knew if I tried to run again, I'd lose. And fighting wasn't an option. He was stronger, and the car was locked tight. I stayed still, looking for another way. Something in my brain clicked into that mode I'd learned during emergencies at work. Stay calm, slow everything down, and don't panic. I turned toward him and spoke softly. "I get it, okay? I'm not going to fight you." I kept my voice steady. "I just want to make it through this. I'll do what you want. You don't have to hurt me." His eyes scanned me, looking for something. "You serious?" I nodded. "Just don't be rough, please. That's all I'm asking." He stared for another second, then leaned back in his seat and looked out the windshield. His jaw was still tight, but he wasn't holding me anymore. I watched him exhale slowly, like some part of him started to believe it. I waited a few seconds, then said, "You must be good at what you do, right? Business, I mean. You're obviously successful." He turned slightly toward me. "You noticed that, huh?" I nodded again. "I saw your watch earlier. That's not cheap. And your car. Nice choice." He smiled faintly, just for a second. I kept going. "You don't need to scare women. You could probably have anyone." He snorted. "That's not how it works." I didn't push. I waited. Then I said, "We'd both be more comfortable at my place. I'm just saying. It's warm, private. You wouldn't have to worry about someone showing up here." His face twitched slightly, like he was thinking about it. I added, "My roommate's out of town. You wouldn't have to rush." The silence stretched for a second. Then he reached for the gear shift. "Where do you live?" he asked. I gave him the cross streets, not the exact address. "You better not be screwing with me," he said. "I'm not," I answered. The drive back was slow. I kept talking. Nothing too personal, just compliments, questions about his work, pretending I was interested. Every time he relaxed a little, I followed it with something neutral or flattering. My voice stayed calm, soft. He didn't touch me again. Just drove with both hands on the wheel, his face unreadable. When we got near my block, I told him to drop me off at the end of the street because of cameras near the entrance. He agreed. As I opened the door, he leaned closer. "You breathe a word of this, I'll know," he said. "Don't think I won't find you." I didn't reply. I stepped out, shut the door, and watched his car disappear down the street before I turned and ran. I sprinted up the stairs to my building and buzzed in. My roommate opened the door and froze when she saw my face. "What happened?" she said. I pushed past her, locked the door, and grabbed my phone. "Call the cops," I told her. My hands were shaking, but my voice was solid. "Right now." She didn't ask questions. While she dialed, I sat on the floor and forced myself to breathe steady. I replayed everything in my head, every detail. His car, the area, the direction he drove off. The detective who took my statement the next morning was quiet while I talked. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "You did the right thing," he said. "This could have ended a lot worse." 2 days later, they called me again. Security footage from a traffic light near that warehouse showed Brandon's car. They ran the plate, traced it to a rental, and picked him up at the address on the rental agreement. I had to go in and confirm his identity. I did. Later, the police told me Brandon had 2 previous convictions in other states, both sealed. He had served time, gotten out, changed his name legally, and vanished from records. He was charged again, and I agreed to testify at trial. The courtroom was packed the day I spoke. I told them everything. Brandon didn't look at me once. The judge sentenced him to 12 years without parole. He's locked up now. But I still check my door twice every night. I still use dating apps sometimes. But I meet in crowded places now. I drive myself. I don't give out my full name or address. It's not paranoia. It's survival. Trust isn't something you owe to someone just because they smile nice or text you first. It's something that's earned, and it takes time. Last summer, I was working night shifts at this 24-hour cafe near the university campus. Most of the students had already gone home for break, so the place was running on a skeleton crew, just 3 of us per shift. I handled cooking in the back, Sarah ran the register and made coffee, and Mike took care of cleaning and stocking. We had a rhythm, and the job wasn't bad. It paid enough to get by, and since I was in culinary school, the hours actually worked around my schedule. The cafe wasn't fancy, just a long counter up front, rows of booths along the windows, and a dimly lit kitchen tucked behind a swinging door. The equipment was old but worked fine. We even had this old-school security system, just a chime that dinged whenever the door opened. It was installed long before I started working there, and from what I could tell, it was barely holding on. Still, it did its job. It chimed when someone came in. Simple. Most nights were uneventful. We had regulars, mostly drivers, students pulling all-nighters, and the occasional drunk trying to sober up on coffee and toast. After midnight, the pace slowed way down. It got quiet. The kind of quiet where you start to notice the hum of the fridge and the clink of Sarah's nails tapping the screen as she checked social media between customers. Mike didn't say much, but he always had his headphones in while mopping or taking trash out back. We didn't really talk much on shift. Everyone knew what they had to do, and that was enough. That one night in July, the air was thick and sticky. The AC had been acting up, so we kept the back door cracked open with a brick, just to get some airflow from the alley. It was a little after 2 a.m., and we were winding down. I was scrubbing down the flat top, Sarah was counting out the drawer, and Mike was wiping down tables in the dining room. Then we heard the door chime. Just the usual beep, nothing unusual at first. Sarah looked up, instinctively said, "Hey there," like she always did, but there was no one there. She stepped out from behind the counter and looked toward the booths. Nothing. No sound, no movement. I leaned out from the kitchen doorway and scanned the room. Empty. We didn't think much of it at first. Probably the door hadn't latched properly, and the wind or pressure from the alley made it pop open slightly. Sarah walked over and pushed it closed, yanking it tight behind her. We laughed it off, chalked it up to the busted air conditioning messing with the airflow. A few minutes later, the chime went off again. I was still in the kitchen, wiping the grill, and I paused with the scraper in my hand. Mike called out from the front, "Hello?" Same thing, no one there. He walked the whole room, even checked the bathrooms, and then came back behind the counter, looking confused. "There's nobody," he said. Maybe someone's messing around outside. We figured maybe it was some college kid messing with the door and running off. Dumb prank, but not unheard of. Sarah checked the security monitor we had above the coffee machines, but it only showed the front entrance and part of the sidewalk. Just empty pavement and a flickering street lamp. We kept going. I went back to cleaning the fryer baskets. Mike went to restock the drink fridge near the back. Sarah pulled her phone out again. Then, about 10 minutes later, it chimed a third time. I didn't hear Sarah say anything this time. Just silence. I walked into the dining room. She was staring at the front door, frozen, like she'd seen something. I followed her line of sight, but again, nothing. Not a soul. She didn't say a word, just slowly walked over and locked the door from the inside, twisting the old deadbolt we never usually touch during business hours. "What?" I asked. She just shook her head. I thought I saw a shadow move past the window. I stepped up to the glass. It was humid outside, foggy, and the glass was streaked with condensation. Nothing moved outside, and the street was dead quiet. The parking lot was mostly empty, except for Mike's old Corolla and a delivery truck parked across the lot. I stepped out the side door to get some air and looked around. The alley was empty. No movement, no sound, just the buzz of a streetlight and the faint hum of power lines. I came back inside and told Sarah, "It's clear." She nodded but still looked off. Mike came up from the back holding a box of creamers. "Okay, someone's screwing with us. I just heard a knock near the dumpster, like someone tapping metal." He wasn't the type to joke around. We followed him through the kitchen and out the back. The dumpster sat against the fence, and there were puddles on the asphalt from an earlier storm. We looked around, checked behind the dumpster, along the fence, even under the pallets leaning against the wall. Nothing. The brick was still holding the door open. "Maybe some raccoon," I said, but no one responded. We went back in. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The mop bucket Mike had left by the front entrance was tipped over, water everywhere. The mop itself was lying halfway across the dining room floor. He looked at me and said, "I didn't leave it like that." We all stood there for a second. No one moved. No one said anything. Then Sarah, trying to shake the tension, said, "All right, seriously. If someone's in here, come out now, or we're calling the cops." We waited. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of the fridge and the low buzz of the lights overhead. Mike picked up the mop and started cleaning up the spill while I checked the kitchen doors. Everything was still locked from the inside. I checked the walk-in cooler, the back storage closet, even the dry goods shelf behind the oven. Nothing. No signs of anyone. We grouped back at the counter. It was 2:47 a.m. Mike sat on a stool near the register, tapping his foot. Sarah was chewing her nails, watching the glass door. I went back to the grill to finish the cleaning. I had just started wiping down the vent hood when the chime went off again. The sensor went off 3 more times over the next hour, each time echoing into the silent dining room without anyone entering. Mike started checking the parking lot through the front window after every chime, pacing slowly from one end of the glass to the other. Nothing moved outside. No headlights. No silhouettes. Just the street lamp flickering like it was on a timer. Sarah stood behind the counter, arms crossed, nervously watching the door. "We should call someone," she said, her voice low. "The manager, the police, I don't know. Something's wrong." I tried to stay grounded. "Maybe the sensor's bugging out because of the humidity. You've seen how wet the floors are near the vents. Moisture could be messing with the electronics." But I didn't believe it completely. Not after it chimed again while the three of us were huddled in the middle of the dining room. We were all there. No one moved. No door opened. But the beep rang through the air just as clear. Mike stood still, facing the sensor. "That wasn't a malfunction," he said. "That was timed. Someone's watching us." Sarah took a step back. "What if it's like one of those stories? A stalker, or someone planning to break in? What if they're testing us to see how we react?" We stood in silence for a second. Then Mike looked toward the back hallway. Could be someone's hiding inside. The bathrooms. Or storage. We searched everything. Every room, stall, closet, and corner. Even pulled open the supply closet and moved boxes. I checked behind the walk-in freezer and even up inside the drop ceiling tiles near the back exit. Nothing. No one. It was just us. But the silence didn't feel empty. It felt heavy. Like someone was holding their breath just outside of sight. The worst part wasn't the beeps anymore. It was the gaps between them. The way we'd be waiting, watching, wondering when it would come again. We sat together near the counter, not even trying to finish closing tasks, just listening. It was almost worse than if someone had actually walked through the door. By 4 a.m, the sensor had gone off 8 times. Each time was just as empty as the last. Sarah had stopped pretending she was okay. She kept glancing at the windows, her keys already in her hand. Mike started stacking chairs on tables faster than usual. I scrubbed down the flat top in silence, not even bothering to do the back shelves. When we were done, we turned off the lights one by one and walked out together. Mike walked Sarah to her car. She didn't say anything when they reached it, just unlocked it, got in, and drove off with the windows still rolled up. I waited for Mike, then headed to my car, the hairs on my neck still raised. I kept checking behind me as I walked. I checked my back seat before I got in. I drove home with my mirrors tilted down to catch the sides of the car. My hands were tight on the wheel the whole way. The next day, I called our manager. I thought he'd be alarmed, maybe ask for details or check the camera system. But he laughed, said he should have warned us. "Yeah, the sensors are junk," he said. "Tech's coming later today. Humidity's been screwing with them all week." That was it. No urgency, no concern, just a shrug over the phone. I hung up, sat back, and stared at the ceiling. I felt stupid. We'd all been ready for something to go wrong. Imagine someone breaking in. A stalker. A threat. But it was just old wiring and sticky summer air. Later that afternoon, the repair tech came. He was maybe in his 50s, quiet, walked straight in with his toolbox and didn't waste time. He unscrewed the panel over the door and showed me the inside of the sensor housing. Small metal contacts slightly corroded and moisture pooled in the bottom edge. "See this?" he said, holding the part up so I could see the corrosion. Humidity gets in and completes the circuit even when the door doesn't move. Old plastic warps. Seals break down. He replaced it with a newer unit. Sleek, sealed, and clean. The new one didn't beep when we opened and closed the door during the test. Just a faint green light on the edge of the screen. He packed up and left without much talk. That night, everything worked. No beeps, no false alarms, nothing but regular customers and the usual buzz of the cooler. But something stayed with me. Not fear exactly, just a kind of awareness. How fast your brain can run away with you when things don't add up. How quickly you fill in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. Sarah didn't come back the next week. She texted us both in the group chat, said she was quitting, said she couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching us that night. Mike and I didn't argue. We just said we understood. Now and then, Mike still brings it up. You think someone was really out there? He'll say while we're restocking the fridge or wiping down the ovens. I usually just shrug. Maybe. Or maybe we scared ourselves worse than anything else ever could. We joke about it sometimes. We call it the ghost customer, the invisible regular who couldn't decide what to order. But behind the jokes, we both know it wasn't funny that night. It was real. Real enough to make us pause every time the sensor beeps now. Real enough that sometimes, when I'm locking up alone, I still wait an extra second before flipping the lights. Just to listen. Just in case.